Is it over for Keir Starmer? Will you ask for Keir Starmer to step down, Mr Miliband? Wes Streeting, are you measuring the curtains?
What did everyone say when Keir Starmer said a leadership race had not been triggered?
Well, it's the fact. The Prime Minister has my full support.
I've just learned exclusively Jess Phillips has resigned from government.
To be honest, Cathy, I don't think it's survivable.
If someone else comes in to lead the Labour Party and become Prime Minister, do they tear up the King's speech?
It's been 24 hours now, and nobody has come forward. No one seems to have the names to stand up against Keir Starmer.
It's 7 o'clock. This is the Cathy Newman Show, and we're back with another 3-hour special between now and 10 p.m. Here we go again. 4 Prime Ministers in 4 years. Are you, like me, channeling Brenda from Bristol? Not another one.
Wes Streeting, are you measuring the curtains? Should the Prime Minister resign, Mr Healy? Will you ask for Keir Starmer to step down, Mr Miliband?
The Cabinet ultimatum, the ministerial resignations, the letters from MPs. It's all wearily familiar. This was July 2022.
As we've seen at Westminster, the herd instinct is powerful. When the herd moves, it moves. And, my friends, in politics, no one is remotely indispensable.
Yes, you could say that again. Just ask the letters.
Given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party.
Liz Truss quit after 45 days. Even rock-solid Rishi Sunak lasted less than 2 years, though it was country, not party, that booted him out.
To the country, I would like to say, first and foremost, I am sorry. I have given this job my all, but you have sent a clear signal that the government of the United Kingdom must change.
Change was Keir Starmer's one-word election slogan. Remember, he promised to end the Tory psychodrama, yet here we are. 90-odd MPs have publicly told the PM to go. 4 ministers have quit. And yet, more have signed a formal statement backing him.
It's been 24 hours now, and nobody has come forward to put themselves forward in the processes that exist in the party. No one seems to have the names to stand up against Keir Starmer. And for those who are suggesting that he should stand down, they should say which candidate would be better.
Enter Wes Streeting. He's holding talks with the PM tomorrow. Will he step up or stand down? Well, David Lammy came out of the doors of number 10 not that long ago. We've been watching comings and goings there all day and will continue to do so all night. So as we sit here tonight, the Labour Party is deeply split over the future of Sir Keir Starmer. Well over 80 Labour MPs, 4 of them who started the day as government ministers before quitting their jobs, are saying the Prime Minister has got to go. So over the next few hours on this special show tonight, we're going to be hearing from the various wings of the Labour movement who are now battling to influence which direction it goes in future. This hour will be joined on my sofa by one of those ministers who's quit today, a Blair-era grandee of the party, and we'll hear from a loyal Home Office minister on why Starmer should stay. It's going to be a busy one. Rather like last night, the calls for the PM to go are continuing to drip through, and we are ready. Well, we have our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, still going strong after an extraordinary 24 hours and will help us make sense of it. Political correspondent Lucy McDade has just been inside a meeting chaired by an MP who's called for the PM to go. We'll find out what's been discussed. And our chief political correspondent, John Craig, is braced and ready in Downing Street on a day when we've seen unprecedented levels of yelling at ministers before anyone had chance to even get their lunch. So the resignations and the plotting has continued today. The latest we're hearing tonight, Health Secretary Wes Streeting is going to meet the Prime Minister tomorrow as Starmer continues to try and fight for his political survival. In Downing Street tonight, they're preparing not just for that showdown in the morning, but the King's speech, of course, where the government is supposed to be setting out its legislative agenda for the coming year. Well, let's first bring in our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. Sam, what a day.
It has been quite remarkable. Look, where we are right now is that 87 Labour MPs have called for Keir Starmer to go. That's not that far off 1 in 4, or really 1 in 3 of those not on the government payroll. That is close to being unsurvivable. There is something of a vacuum tonight. We are looking at the people who are potentially the front runners to replace Keir Starmer, and there is silence tonight from Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, Andy Burnham, the Metro Mayor of Manchester, who is in London. Part of that, Cathy, is because in a matter of hours tomorrow morning, there will be the King's Speech, an incredible moment of pageantry where the King Charles processes from Buckingham Palace into the Palace of Westminster in order to deliver the list of government bills that the government hopes will be passed over the next few months. And there is a bit of an omerta at the moment. People don't want to embarrass the monarch, so things have gone a bit quiet. But we know that Wes Streeting will go in to see Keir Starmer tomorrow morning to talk about the turbulence. And we know that once the King's Speech is out of the way, well, at some point, this rather uneasy, steady state is going to have to move. It is very hard to govern with 87 MPs against you, 87 of your own side, in perpetuity saying, I do not believe you should be leader. I would not expect this stasis to hold for long.
Sam, a lot of the rebels have sort of gone to ground, and Downing Street is mounting this extraordinary fight back. It is possible, isn't it, that he survives this?
I think it's really quite tough. Yes, there is quite a lot of resolve in Downing Street. They have sent out cabinet ministers this morning after the meeting, and then again David Lammy this evening, to make the case that, look, nobody's come forward, nobody has actually challenged the Prime Minister. There isn't a challenge under the rules, so they're almost saying, what's the fuss? But when 87 of your own have made statements like that, I do think it's hard to come back from. The Labour Party is fundamentally split, as you were saying earlier in your introduction, but what to do next, partly because there are big divisions over who should take over from Keir Starmer. But think of it like this, Cathy. At the next election, is it really feasible that in 87 different constituencies, Labour candidates will have their comment about the leader of the Labour Party hurled back at them by every single opponent? I think it is very hard for the Prime Minister to fight or even to hang on for that long. 87 is more than the number of MPs needed to defeat the government on legislation. 87 MPs is more than the number needed to mount a challenge if MPs can work out a single challenger to gather behind. So no, I think we are past the point, almost certainly, of no return. Quite when it happens, though, is the thing that's less clear, partly because of the division in the Labour Party about what to do next.
Sam, well, I've no doubt that we'll be back to you later in the show with more breaking news. No doubt it is that kind of day. Well, earlier today, Miata Fahnbulleh was the first of the ministers to resign their position, calling on the PM to do the right thing for the country and set out steps for a transition. The former Housing, Communities and Local Government Minister is here. And as you can see, my sofa duo is here at the other end of the sofa as well. Former Conservative Minister Gillian Keegan, familiar with these prime ministerial resignations from the Tories, of course, and former RMT boss Mick Lynch. Miata Fahnbulleh first, just explain why you took the decision to quit.
Yeah, look, it's not an easy decision. It's a hard thing to walk away from your team, to walk away from the chance to have an impact on the country as a minister. But for me, I've spent the last few months on the doorstep speaking to hundreds and hundreds of constituents, and the message was really clear. They have lost confidence and trust in the Prime Minister, and they don't believe that he is able to deliver the scale and the change that is required for us to deliver on our mandate that we promised the country. And I come to the judgment that that is right, and that ultimately the Prime Minister does need to do the right thing for the country, and he needs to set a transition so that a new leader can take over and deliver the scale and pace of change that we need.
He's not getting that message, though. He's digging in. He's staying put.
Well, look, the Prime Minister's a good guy. He has always tried to do the best thing for the country. What I'm hoping is that he will reflect, and there are two fundamental questions. Can you command the confidence of the country? Because you need that if you're going to take the country with you to deliver the scale of change that we need. And are you capable of delivering the level of ambition? People are frustrated. They've had 15 years where things have not been going right and working for them, and they want a government that can step up. And the Prime Minister has to reflect, and ultimately it's his choice, it's his judgment on those two questions. And if the answer to those in his heart is no, I hope he will do the right thing. I hope he will put in place a proper process and a transition so that we can have a range of people who can set out their stall, set out their vision for the country, tell us how they will deliver on our mandate, on our manifesto in the most ambitious way forward, and then we rally around that person.
But you say it's his choice and his judgment. Actually, there is another way, obviously. You know, Wes Streeting or someone like that who's seeing the PM tomorrow could stand up and say, right, I'm going to launch a leadership challenge. Shouldn't they have the decency to do that, people who are briefing privately?
Well, look, I don't do briefing privately. I speak
You're
my
doing it
mind.
publicly on the pink sofa.
This is why I'm here. But look, I can't speak for Wes Streeting. I can't speak for any of the potential runners and riders.
So you're not part of a coordinated plot?
No.
You're not teeing this up with Wes Streeting?
No.
A coup, the left of the party suspects?
No, look, I don't think this is a coup. For me, this is a personal decision. It's a really hard thing for colleagues to go on the record and to say that they have lost confidence in the Prime Minister, that they don't think he can lead us forward. That is a very personal decision. I know each and every colleague will be grappling with what they heard on the doorstep, and those were some tough, brutal messages that we got, and trying to make a judgment about what is best for the country. And ultimately, it's not about a coordinated plot, it's about each of us making that decision. I can't speak for Wes, but what I will say is whatever we do, we need a proper process. We need to do that in a timely, proper way so that we can have a conversation about the best possible way to respond to the demand for change, the urgency for change that we are hearing loud and clear from all of our constituencies and our communities.
Have you spoken to Wes Streeting in the last few days?
No, I've not spoken to Wes. I've not spoken to anyone. Like I
Ed
came
Miliband?
to this. No, I came to this decision myself. And look, ultimately, people make this about personalities. It's not. It's about the country.
But have you spoken to his aides, though? Because, you know, just to knock this on the head that it's not a plot.
This is not a plot.
Have you spoken to Wes Streeting's aides, though?
No, I've not.
So they had no idea you were coming out and doing this?
No. And if anyone knows anything about me, I'm probably seen to be on a different side of the party from Wes, and that is the key point.
Ed Miliband, though, did you let his aides know, give them a heads up?
I told my boss, Steve Reed, that I was doing this. I told the whips, I told Number 10 in advance. I had already said all of this to them privately. I didn't want to have to go public. I felt I needed to, and that's because, ultimately, if you're part of the team, you've got to believe that the boss is the right boss to take you forward and take the country forward. And that is not my judgment. And I couldn't, in all good conscience, stay on the team.
What did Steve Reed say to you?
He said, look, stick it out. And I said to him, look, this is a question for me about conscience, my relationship with the constituency. I've heard a message loud and clear, and I think it's important to speak up. And obviously he disagrees.
Was he angry? I mean, because the party at the moment looks like, I mean, it's riven, isn't it, from top to bottom?
No, I don't think so. Look, I have a really good relationship with all my colleagues. We are not, the press like to do the personality politics, the drama. In the end, you've got a set of colleagues that were part of the same Labour family. We care about one thing. All of us came into politics to do one thing, which was do right by our constituents and our communities and deliver change. And ultimately, we will come together. Labour Party does not do leadership changes over and over again. We have one shot at this, which is why I think it is so important that we have a proper, orderly process where we have the range of talents, and that does include Andy Burnham, who is a fantastic politician, has a track record in Greater Manchester, probably our most popular politician. We need him in the field with everyone else. Set out your stall for how you deliver for the country, and we will rally behind the person that we think is the best person that can deliver the mandate that we have, and it's a mandate that the Labour Party have, that all of us that signed up to that manifesto have, the best person to deliver that.
So, do you expect an MP to stand aside to let Andy Burnham come back into the Commons ASAP?
Well, look, I can't speak for Andy Burnham. You'll have to ask him that question. But what I am very clear...
But a deal's being done behind the scenes, isn't it?
I don't know. But what I am very clear about is that any contest that we have has to be a proper conversation about how we take the country forward. And that does require us to have all of our talent, and that does require us to have Andy in.
So is he your favourite candidate?
I think we need to slow down. I think we need to take this in time. My ask, the ask of many of my colleagues to the Prime Minister, is set in train a proper process Do it calmly, do it slowly. None of us want the chaos. None of us want the...
Have you seen the gilt yields? I mean, they're responding. You're saying orderly transition, take your time. You haven't got time. You haven't got the luxury of time, have you?
Well, I think that's within the gift of the Prime Minister, because if he grips this, if he does this in an orderly way, if he says, you know, my personal view is that he needs to see us through the summer. We are in the middle of a war. We know that the war in Iran is going to have an impact on our communities over the summer. I want him to serve the country and lead us through that. Put in place a proper process, do it in a calm, orderly way, allow the best of our talent to set out their stall over that period and then transition properly.
So by digging in, is he actually making the markets more jittery, do you think?
It's within the gift of the Prime Minister to do this in a way that is orderly, to do this in a way that delivers a proper transition. The Labour Party, we do not do leadership changes. We do not do psychodrama. We have one shot at
You're doing quite well at that at the moment.
Well, you know, it's pretty tough. It is pretty tough, but we have one shot at this. We're not going to keep changing leaders like the Tories did. We'll do this once. We have to get that right. And it is not about us. It is not about the individuals. It is about who can step up to the challenge of responding to what our constituents want, which is change.
But is Andy Burnham your number one...
scale of change.
Is Andy Burnham your number one candidate as we sit here now?
Well, look, if Andy Burnham was in Parliament, I'd be supporting him.
Right.
And ultimately, I think we need a process that allows, whether it's Andy, Wes, whoever else, to essentially say what they're going to do for the country.
And if Ed Miliband was to be a sort of caretaker leader until Andy Burnham got here, you'd back that?
No, look, it's not for me to say what the process looks like. I wish I could wave a magic wand and all of this could go away and we're in a settled state on the other side
You're
of it.
hating this, basically.
Yeah, all of us are. This is not what I came into politics for. This is not... It's a hard thing to say to your leader, we don't think you're the right person to take us forward. None of us do this lightly. This is not fun. We're not enjoying this. We are a team. We are one team. And for some of us to stand up and say, we think it is time for you to move on because you cannot lead us and lead the change that we want is not an easy thing, and it is not something that we do lightly.
Let me just bring in you, Mick, because I wonder what you think of what you just heard from Miata now.
Well, I admire Miata for coming out in the way she has. I knew her before she was elected, and I know that she's a good person. And it is a bad spot for the Labour Party at this time, but I think this change is inevitable. It's a matter of time and how, and there's a lot of options that all the news media have been going through today.
Would you back the Andy Burnham option, bring him back to Westminster as soon as possible?
Well, I think Andy Burnham is a better option, but none of this matters if there's not a programme. And what people are struggling with is what Labour is about. People don't understand Keir Starmer. They don't know what he is, they don't know what he believes in, they don't know what his principles are. They've forgotten what the manifesto was. He said it was one word, and the one word hasn't been delivered because they continued...
That word was change.
Yes, exactly. They've continued with the Tory fiscal policies, and you're going to get Tory outcomes.
Right, well...
And that's what people need, is a change. So whether it's Burnham, whether it's Streeting, whoever it is, needs to put forward a platform that's going to deliver change in the next 2.5 years before the next election.
Miata, let me put that back to you. Tear up the fiscal rules, as you seem to be sort of hinting.
Well, look, I think two things. We will stand by, and any leader has to stand by the manifesto because that's the thing that gives us the mandate. That's the thing we were all elected on. I think the question for me is how do you deliver not just the spirit of the manifesto, but the substance and the most ambitious version of the substance. And ultimately, it will be for those that put themselves, if we have a contest, and I remind you, we're not in a contest yet, but if we have a proper contest, it's for each of the people that want to lead this country to set out what they are going to do. And that does require ambition, that does require an urgency to respond to the fact that people do not believe that the current settlement is working for them, and think about what that means in terms of the scale of change we can deliver.
Gillian, very quick one from you. You know, Miata is obviously hating this whole psychodrama. She says the Labour Party isn't very good at toppling its leaders, which appears to be true. Your advice as someone, you know, you're from a party that does rather well at toppling its leaders.
Well, yes, although I didn't resign on Boris and I hadn't voted for the guy in the first place. And the reason I didn't was because you have to be really careful about where you're going. The whole reason they're in this mess is because there was not a plan in the first place. They need a plan now, and it really needs to be well thought through because you can't have your Liz Truss moment.
And that seems to be echoing what Miata
your
said.
Rishi.
Miata, thank you very much for sharing that with us. And, you know, it is obviously a very painful time for you, so I appreciate you coming on. Well, our political correspondent Lucy McDade is down the road from us in Westminster at the moment, where a meeting of the Labour Growth Group, chaired by an MP who came onto Sky News yesterday and dramatically called for the Prime Minister to go, have been meeting. Lucy, you were inside. What was it like?
Yeah, well, the first thing that one of the MPs hosting the event said was that it was much busier than they originally anticipated. It's worth pointing out that this was planned a while ago, actually, really because Labour MPs knew that the local election results would be really challenging and that this would be their week to stage some pretty significant interventions in the hope of trying to bring the Labour Party back from the brink. Of course, now that we are in the midst of this kind of leadership crisis, it is holding a whole new significance. Chris Curtis, maybe you know his name, maybe you don't, but he was on Sky News yesterday saying that it is now time for the Prime Minister to resign. He chairs this group of Labour MPs. There's about more than 100 of them that support this caucus of the party, if you like. Their big message today is that hard work no longer pays. And if the Labour Party wants to win back, not just voters who went to the Greens, but voters who went to Reform, they need to put forward some pretty radical economic changes. You mentioned the room there. Well, Chris Curtis, this backbench MP, he won in the 2024 general election. As politicians often do when they open these type of events, they make jokes about what's going on in the week. But he did say, quite honestly, it's been an incredibly difficult few days for the party. For him personally, he said it's been agonising, having to make a decision about which way the party now needs to go. He was honest, and this is one of the problems that we are talking about, isn't it? That party members, MPs, don't know which direction the party should go in. Well, here they are tonight offering which direction they think it should go in. Just a couple of things that they think any Prime Minister should do, whether it's Keir Starmer or whoever else comes into number 10. They think that there needs to be some serious tax changes, reform capital gains tax to cut up to 2 pence off employee national insurance, things that they say will genuinely put more money into people's pockets. There is a real feeling that something radical needs to be done, and under Keir Starmer, not enough has been done.
And Lucy, I gather you've been getting some more eyebrow-raising reaction in the last few minutes from some other Labour backbenchers.
Yeah, when I tell you that every political journalist's, WhatsApp messages have been, I don't think I've left WhatsApp over the past kind of 48 hours. I've had a particularly dramatic one this evening, which I think sums up, actually, we're making jokes about it, but I think it sums up. I've spoken to a number of MPs today who are seething with what is playing out in Westminster. And this one MP, worth noting, a soft left MP, you would describe them, has said the situation this evening is bonkers. Every hour the Prime Minister spends roosting in Downing Street like a petulant chicken, damages the party and the country even more. He is a laughingstock. Goes on to take a swipe at Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, who we haven't heard from today, but plenty of speculation that he is plotting behind the scenes, something his team denies. But this MP goes on to say the media are focusing on Wes Streeting, whether or not he's going to run. And let's remember, he's pointing this out here. This does the country no good. People's confidence in politics is through the floor. This MP goes on to say Wes Streeting is the Secretary of State for Health, not a zoomy donkey. I think, it's fair to say there are a lot of MPs watching this play out, that they're furious. I mean, this MP actually does want to see a change of leader, but they want to see it done, some of them, in an orderly transition. They want all of this drama to stop, which is why, actually, a lot of MPs and party members are meeting in that building just over the road from me, trying to talk about policy, not pantomime.
Chickens and donkeys. Thanks very much, Lucy. You couldn't make it up. The Labour peer and former Home Secretary, Lord Blunkett, joins me now on the sofa. Well, David Blunkett, let's start there. I mean, the Prime Minister, a petulant chicken. Where do you sit on this?
Where do I sit? I think it's a circus. I think that my colleagues in the Commons need to calm down, change their language, think about how it reflects both back in their constituencies and more broadly. And let's try and get a grip of ourselves. We can conduct what is an incredibly difficult moment with some dignity, or we can look like amateurs. And at the moment, the kind of language that Lucy's just enunciated takes us nowhere, but it's incredibly damaging to the image both of democratic politics and of my party, and that's not in the interest of anyone.
You wrote a piece at the weekend offering what you called friendly advice to the Prime Minister, talking about the need for a reset with clarity and certainty. He didn't take your advice, did he?
Well, I was hoping that the speech he made yesterday would have been a clarion call. I didn't disagree with any of it, except it didn't relate directly to the issues that we're addressing and the message that we got last Thursday. So I'm fully in favour of a realignment with Europe, but that wasn't the issue that was on the doorstep or in the voting booth last Thursday. This was a much more deep-seated aggravation about the lack of progress in radical change and boldness. So my message, I hope, which will be reflected in tomorrow's King's speech, although legislation is only a tiny part of doing politics, will be to show a much more ambitious, a much bolder approach. And if he can do that from tomorrow, who knows? At the moment, if I can just, with the dog at my feet, is a dog's dinner, isn't it? A complete dog's dinner.
Certainly is. Sleeping beautifully on the floor.
The problem is, Cathy, we've got a juxtaposition of two entirely polar opposites. One is we need stability. We need stability so the markets don't damage our economy still further. We need stability because of the insecurities that we see in the world with the US-Israeli attack on Iran and the aftermath. And we need stability in terms of mobilising the civil service to deliver. But on the other hand, and I have to say this, having been in the Labour Party for over 60 years, we've got to try and save my party. I mean, there are still people in Downing Street, I know there are, from the weekend, who still haven't got just how incredibly damaging last Thursday was.
Right, so they're deluded? In
our heartlands. Well, they're not in touch. And antennae, being in touch, listening, not believing what somebody's propagandising in your ear, is always a message that I found Tony Blair was receptive to. That's why when I went in to talk to Tony Blair and told him what he didn't want to hear, he was grateful rather than aggravated.
Right.
And a little bit of stepping back. I think that elected mayors are being contacted. I think that some of them are seeing Keir Starmer even tomorrow, even though it's the King's speech. I hope they'll be able to get the message across of precisely how bad it was in the north of England, where I come from and which I know best. It was catastrophic.
So Andy Burnham is going into number 10 tomorrow, you believe?
I do know that a number of the elected mayors are. I have no reason to believe that Keir Starmer wouldn't talk to Andy Burnham. Why would he not?
That's going to be a very interesting meeting.
Well, it will be. But, of course, we're in this juxtaposition, aren't we, where there's the maelstrom going on at the moment with people signing a letter that says Keir should set a timetable, another lot saying Keir should stay. Andy's nowhere near being in Parliament, and there's no point in dragging this circus out for a lengthy period of time. Either we have to settle and Keir Starmer can demonstrate that he can actually pull this round and re-relate to the electorate, or there has to be a timetable, and that timetable would have to be rapid enough not to damage the interests of the country. And they'd have to be very clear, the candidates, that they were reassuring the markets with what they were saying and doing. And that's the opposite to what they'll have to do to get elected with some of the big trade unions in the hands of the far left. So we're in a mess as a country, and my party, sadly, is in a mess as well.
So if it were done, 'twere better done quickly, to misquote Shakespeare.
I mean,
no doubt.
I'm not all that keen on Shakespeare.
But I mean, get on with it. It's your message.
I'm not into the Macbeth.
But get on with it. Is your message to the rebels? I
did say in the article on Sunday that back in June 2009, when Gordon Brown was under severe attack, I actually came down, having been knocked down by a cow, and with 3 broken ribs and a bruised face, 2 days after it had occurred, to go to the parliamentary party meeting and say, put up or shut up, because it was damaging my party, it was damaging the Prime Minister at a time when he just actually played a major part in stabilising the world economy following the global meltdown. And of course, what happened then was that attention moved to everything else except the success he'd had on the world economy. And at the moment, Keir Starmer's been doing a great deal better in terms of defence, security, trade, the perspective of the world on our country than he has at home. And if only he could have replicated that in the last 2 years here in the domestic agenda, we might be in a very different place.
So put up or shut up now is your message to the rebels?
Well, yeah, there is that similarity I've just described in terms of what's going on in the world out there and what's going on in Westminster and Whitehall.
I mean, you clearly want the current situation, the current chaos, the circus, as you've described it, to end. But it's not clear you're veering towards stick with the Prime Minister, get behind him?
I've tried very hard to be a critical friend over recent weeks. The attacks on him that were made by our official opponents in the House of Commons about whether he lied from the dispatch box were all shown to be completely untrue. And I've done my best to reveal that. And I will continue to support whilst the support is of any help whatsoever. But there may well be in the very near future a tipping point where it's gone. And only Keir Starmer and his wife Victoria can really make a judgment on that, because this is about human beings and not just about political razzmatazz.
Right, so do you think that tipping point is within hours of being reached?
I don't know about hours. It feels to me to be close, and I'd like the world to be in a different place.
Well, let me bring in Mick and Gillian sitting on the sofa there. I mean, Mick, you know, you heard David set out in a very measured way there what the issue is. Do you agree that, you know, we're reaching that tipping point, but the rebels are doing no end of damage?
I think they're doing damage. I think the tipping point has passed. I don't think Keir Starmer's going to survive. I wouldn't want to be in the position he's in personally. But I think his credibility's gone. I think the speech on Monday didn't change anything. I think for the public listening to that, it came across as robotic, technical, and not really addressing the anger and alienation that's out there that David has mentioned. It's not just in the north of England. The north of England is very important, but we've seen all of eastern England go to reform as well, effectively, and bits of London have gone to reform, which is a remarkable change in my lifetime of Labour not being so dominant in London. So that has gone. I think it's now the dignity he's got in his remaining time. Is he the caretaker Prime Minister with whatever timetable it is, the summer recess or party conference or whatever point they pick, and then he can get some control and the party can get back to normal, and they have to have an open contest that is about values and programme. It can't just be, let's have more of the same, because whoever gets in, if they just carry on in this way of trying to be some kind of technocrat or some kind of manager without having belief and passion, we're going to go back to the same thing. And that could lead to the disintegration of the party, I think, which would be a big shame.
And you've advocated tearing up the fiscal rules.
Well, I think keeping the fiscal rules was a mistake. Whether you can just tear them up in that way, in a sort of fit of petulance, I don't know. I'm not a chief economist.
But
I think that has been a mistake.
Left,
I think we need to show to the people we're doing things for you. Some of the things that we've heard, cutting national insurance may be a way. You've got to make up for that in the balance sheet somehow. But they need to connect with the people. What there is a massive disconnection between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. That's not an attack, but I just think there has been a perceived disconnection, and it's become a real disconnection between professional politicians and real people at work, in the home and in their communities. And that has got to be remade and remodelled so that people are in touch again with their politicians.
David, I mean, it all adds up to a dramatic shift to the left, whoever's in charge in number 10,
Well, I don't see this as being a major ideological attack. I really don't. You see, I've been through the old left-right. I'm getting a message from number 10, I think, at this very moment.
It was very elegantly dealt with, though.
Sorry about that. I don't see it as a left-right. I mean, it really isn't. I've been through these in the 1980s. I was very much embroiled as a member of the National Executive in what was going on then. This doesn't feel like that. This is about a desire to see really, really strong action put into practice effectively with competence, and to get over certainly the first year of the government, which by anybody's standards was unfortunate.
I agree with David. I don't think it's left and right. It's boldness or passiveness. And what the country thinks is that this government is passive when the country's got problems. Not internationally. I take that point that he, like many leaders, he's more popular abroad than he is at home and more respected abroad. He's not respected in this country at this moment. And I think if he goes out into any town at this time, that will be shown. So we need to be bold. We need to show people, the government needs to show people that they're doing things for them that are going to change their lives, going to give their kids some security, give them an opportunity to get an apprenticeship, get a meaningful job, and get some housing done. So going back to some principles about public ownership and public housing, municipally controlled housing, not in the hands of the developers, would be a bold step. It would be a complete change to what we've had for the last 20 or 30 years.
Sounds like you're backing Angela Rayner.
Well, I don't care who the leader is, frankly. I'm not into that. I'm not into I'm backing this one or that one. I want the programme to be right, and I want this government to be successful.
They really
I have been
want you
critical
number
of this
10,
government,
David.
but I want it to succeed, because the opposite of it succeeding is a nightmare. Having Farage and his people running this country with a hard right Tory coalition will be an absolute disaster for working people.
Gillian, you've got to agree with that last point. Maybe not the hard right
Well,
bit,
I mean, I'm not hard right, and as an apprentice and somebody who worked for 30 years before going into politics, I'm also not one of those politicians.
I agree with that, by the way. Yeah.
And you know, I did have more real jobs than most people. I mean, fundamentally, the problem we've got is there isn't really much money. We spent it all on COVID. And we have the bond markets. We are not the favourite of the bond markets, and we've already tested them and overnight tested them even further. The cost of that debt is over 100 billion. That is off the scale, how much money we're spending on dead money. And that's the key part of the problem. All this boldness needs to be within that envelope of whatever we do, because we're not going to be able to borrow much more money at a reasonable rate. It's going to cost a fortune.
David, isn't it? You know, whether it's Andy Burnham, Angela Rayner, you know, I mean, we don't really know how Wes Streeting would deal with it, but the problem with the bond market and the fact there is no money. There's no magic money tree.
Well, it's very complicated because a lot of the reaction of the bond markets is on an algorithm, which might sound bizarre, but it is. And the bond markets have been reacting very badly in relation to lending to other countries, except, of course, the Eurozone is so large and the dollar area is so large that they can cope with it.
Well, that's an argument for rejoining
much
the
more
EU,
easily.
isn't it?
Much more. Well, I was never in favour of joining the Euro, but I'm just stating a fact. It enables them to borrow at much lower rates, which is bizarre because our economy has been performing for some time better than some of the countries who are borrowing cheap. But that's where we are. I mean, that's the reality.
It's not going to change.
That's the reality of globalisation and modern finance. And, you know, I was reminded the other day in a seminar with students at Sheffield University about Chris Mullen's book, which was turned into a film called A Very British Coup. And
Yes.
the funny thing is that the Prime Minister, I think his name was Perkins, was actually from Sheffield. And this guy led a socialist government that was brought down. And that's hence the coup bit. And actually, it's worth watching. So we should revive it.
Well, who would be better for Sheffield? Angela Rayner, Andy Burnham?
Well,
Wes
what about?
Streeting?
I think I did a fair job in Sheffield when I was.
Are you standing for the leadership?
That could be dancer.
The one thing you can be assured of before we finish this conversation
You got the dog
is that being in the House of Lords is a great immune system from any suggestion of me coming back. So just in case my wife has an absolute fit, I'm not doing it.
But Angela Rayner hasn't got your endorsement.
Well, I'm not endorsing anybody because, as people say, and it is a jargon, but there isn't a vacancy. And when there is, and when there's a contest, I'll make my mind up.
David Blunkett, thank you very much for coming in. It's been great to hear from you.
See you soon.
Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, is in Downing Street. John, it's pretty odd. They're preparing for this Starmer-Streeting meeting in the morning, and the small matter of a King's speech.
I was enjoying that, actually. I remember A Very British Coup, written by Chris Mullin, the former MP. Harry Perkins, his great hero. John McDonnell's a great fan of that book and sees himself as a Harry Perkins character. Anyway, never mind that. Yes, here there's a bit of a lull in the warfare, really, in the hostilities ahead of the King's speech tomorrow. There is a view here that they don't want to do anything that might be seen as discourteous to the King ahead of his big day. There were suggestions that the Buckingham Palace had said to Number 10, "Ooh, should we go ahead with the King's speech?" But that was clearly rebuffed very quickly. Yes, big King's speech tomorrow. His Majesty, of course, goes down the Mall, and of course the carriages and all the pomp and all that pageantry in the morning. And then, of course, in the afternoon, the Prime Minister's got a speech to make, because what happens on King's Speech Day is, of course, you get the knocking on the door, a black rod and all that. They go to the House of Lords to hear it, then come back to the Commons. You hear from a junior MP and then a veteran MP, then it's the Leader of the Opposition, and then it's the Prime Minister, a big set-piece debate which kicks off about 5 days of debate. So the Prime Minister, beleaguered, embattled, has to make a big fighting speech, convince not only the public but also his own backbenchers that he is fit to continue. And at the time when 100 or so of his backbenchers are saying he should step down and set a timetable to go. So, big speech by the Prime Minister, big parliamentary occasion, big showdown. And yet, first thing in the morning, he's got this meeting with Wes Streeting. Now, we know that at Cabinet today, Wes Streeting wanted to have a private word with the Prime Minister afterwards. That's why he was the last to leave. When other ministers came out and spoke to journalists just here, Wes Streeting scurried down the road because he'd been rebuffed, didn't get a chance to talk to the Prime Minister. So that's rearranged for tomorrow morning. Will Wes Streeting give him notice that he is preparing to mount a challenge? Probably not quite like that, because Wes Streeting has always said he's not going to challenge the Prime Minister, but of course if a vacancy occurs he will be a candidate. So that'll be pretty early, because of course the King's speech is about 11:30, and if David Blunkett is correct, and David normally is, Andy Burnham and other Metro mayors from around the UK, from England certainly, are coming here at some point later in the day. So it could well be that in the course of tomorrow, the Prime Minister not only has to go and face MPs in the chamber, but also has a meeting with Wes Streeting and then later on Andy Burnham.
I mean, that sounds a bit like a circular firing squad, doesn't it?
Indeed.
Well, John, thanks as ever, and we'll be back to you with any breaking news later in the show. But in the last few minutes, none other than Donald Trump has been asked about the Prime Minister's predicament tonight. Sky's Mark Stone has been speaking to him about it as the President was leaving the White House for his trip to China. Mark.
Hi, Cathy. Yeah, he just took off on Marine One, making his way at the beginning of a very long trip, a long journey, I should say, to China. But before he got on the helicopter, it was an opportunity to ask him about his on-off pal, Keir Starmer. I mean, this is an unlikely relationship that really was very good at one stage, but has certainly meandered over the past few months. He has been critical of the Starmer government, critical of things like energy and immigration. But he's always said that he likes Keir Starmer as a person. He's well aware of the challenges that the Prime Minister has been under over the past 24, 48 hours, and so I asked him about them. Thank you. Mark Stone from Sky News. What's your advice to Keir Starmer, sir? He seems to be on the brink.
Well, my advice to him has always been, open up your oil in the North Sea. You got one of the great oil finds anywhere in the world, and you're not using it. They're not allowed to use it. And it's one of the best in the world, among the best oils in the world. Open up your oil in the North Sea and get tough on immigration.
Did he stay or go?
Europe is being very, very hurt by immigration all over Europe.
Did he stay or go?
That's up to him. But I've told him from day one, You're getting killed on energy. You're windmilling your country to death. Open up the North Sea. You have one of the greatest sources of energy in the world. Open up the North Sea.
The pressure is from Nigel Farage, sir. You're windmilling your country to death, Cathy. I think that's got to go down as one of the best ever Trump lines. Windmilling your country to death, so he says. He said it so many times. He's got a golf course near Aberdeen. A load of wind farms, or a wind farm, has been built just offshore. It ruins the view. And so he hates it. Clearly, he has real, deep-seated anxieties about certain British policies, immigration, clearly, energy as well. He's talked so often about the North Sea. But look, to David Blunkett's point earlier on, I do think it's worth stressing that domestically, Keir Starmer's had so many challenges, maybe perhaps in part because he spent so long abroad. He has gone on so many trips, and he has built up some really important relationships with the American president, yes, but with many other world leaders around the world as well. And so I think it is true that internationally, he is more respected than he has been domestically, and anyone who takes over from him, if he goes, will clearly be an unknown for so many world leaders, if not all world leaders around the world.
Mark, thanks very much for that update. Very interesting. But let's go back now to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. Sam, some fresh reporting about Ed Miliband coming through in the last few minutes, so fill us in on that.
Yeah, we're in a bit of a vacuum, if I'm being honest, Cathy, and into it, people are filling it with claims and rumours, and so there's a bit of a job of various figures around the place trying to shut stuff down. So the first example of this was something that was circulating around social media, suggesting that this meeting between Wes Streeting and the Prime Minister tomorrow, well, that was Wes Streeting's moment to tell the Prime Minister that he was effectively upping stumps and wouldn't be challenging him and abandoning any thought of the leadership. But it appears that that might have now come from a hostile source to Wes Streeting, and that is not true, I am told, by the Streeting camp. Now there are rumours circulating about Ed Miliband. If Wes Streeting goes for the leadership, there are some claims circulating that Ed Miliband would stand because Andy Burnham was not ready because he was not an MP. That too is now being denied by the Miliband camp. All of this is really just to try and paint a picture of how febrile it is. Politics, more than anything else, absolutely abhors a vacuum, but there's essentially a cessation of hostilities, partly because of the King's speech, I think, and partly because various camps are just simply not wanting to make the first move against the Prime Minister. There's an uneasy status at the moment. 87 MPs, of course, have come out against the Prime Minister, but where will this lead and who might challenge him? It seems highly unlikely that this will hold for long, but just at the moment, no camp is saying anything publicly.
And we'll try and find out a little bit more about this meeting that David Blunkett was referring to with some of the mayors, possibly including Andy Burnham, in Number 10 also tomorrow. Sam, thanks as ever for your update. And the turmoil surrounding the Prime Minister will dominate the agenda on our late-night programme, The Wrap, tonight from 10 p.m. Here to discuss today's developments and the best of tomorrow's papers will be the former Conservative Special Advisor, Salma Shah, and Sir Keir Starmer's former Director of Communications, James Lyons. Well, let's speak now to Tom Baldwin, who is Keir Starmer's biographer. What do you make of this today?
The carnival of chaos of every media organisation outside Downing Street baying for another body to be tossed from the windows. Well, it'd be, what, the 7th Prime Minister in 10 years?
Four in 4 years is even worse, somehow.
It's a very weird spectacle. I mean, and it's sort of seen as sort of almost like a sort of national event now, like the sort of Grand National or the FA Cup final. And I don't think this does this country any credit at all. To have 7 Prime Ministers in 10 years makes us not a serious country. And it's embarrassing. And, yeah, I honestly, the idea that right now, to change Prime Minister, we're on the cusp of a recession, got the prospect of energy supplies running out, there's a war in the Middle East which affects our security, there's another war in Ukraine which affects security. It's nuts.
Mick, put him right, because, you know, you were saying quite the opposite just a few minutes ago.
Well, I don't want this government to be in chaos. I don't want Keir Starmer to be failing, but the fact is he is. And it's very unfortunate timing. But I suppose Prime Ministers don't fall when everything's going swimmingly. Prime Ministers fall when there's a crisis. And his opponents, the people that are asking him to go, are asking him to go for his own good, I think. Because I think this government will go into a more severe crisis if Keir Starmer is announced the victor in this chaos. I do agree with that. And there isn't any change. What needs to change is the programme and a person that is capable of articulating a fresh programme for the rest of this government.
There may well be a moment, some point in this Parliament, where the Labour Party needs to look at leadership. I think there's quite a lot of people who recognise that, Keir Starmer's made some mistakes. He may not be the best, speaker and politician. But right now, and it is right now, where Labour Party has to make the decision, it's the wrong decision.
So put it off, Mick.
Well, he could put it off by saying this is the timetable. I will go at the end of a process which is at his discretion in some ways in coordination with the party.
This is part of the nonsense. This is part of the kind of this sort of ritual that we go through. It's like, we want you to go now, letters going in. Can you do a timetable?
He does like a process, old Keir, though.
Yeah, but this is not this sort of process, I tell you, right? I mean, I think very clear in Prime Minister's mind this morning and over the last few days is if he went, he would be the person unleashing the chaos. We remember what happened, the first of these Prime Ministers to go, David Cameron walking out as soon as the Brexit vote, unleashing chaos. Rather than taking responsibility for the mess he got us in by that stupid referendum, he walked out, and ever since then, the referendum was stupid. Ever since then, we have had this turmoil and chaos. And the media love it. It's great spectacle. It's not good government. It's not good for this country. It's not good for people actually having a real crisis, genuine crisis, in their living rooms, or the crisis that's happening on the global stage.
And Gillian, you know that because from bitter experience, the Conservative psychodrama.
Yep.
As we've
and I never involved myself in any of it because I do agree that I've spent most of my career abroad, and how people look at us, we are held in very high esteem. They're going to be looking at us thinking, what on earth has happened?
We're a laughingstock now, aren't we,
And
Mick?
however, you've got to say that Keir Starmer is the architect of his own downfall. He has done literally everything wrong. He's even making this resignation worse than it possibly could be. Everything he touches, he makes worse.
We don't look good, and nor does the political process.
And I don't
for quite
dislike
a while.
him.
But some of it is about not having won the battle of ideas, not having a programme.
He has a process, not an idea.
Keir Starmer has not been able to tell the public what the change he promised is.
That's the point, isn't it, Tom?
Look, I've been critical.
How about doing the work before he got here? That would have been great.
Look, I've been critical of the failure to put together all the different policies now, some of which I think are really great, into a story about this government and this country. But I tell you what, if you want to know what Keir Starmer's done, just look at how the bond markets are twitching. If you want to look at what Rachel Reeves has done, look at how the bond markets are twitching today. I was talking to people today.
They twitched for Liz Truss. What are you trying to say?
They didn't just twitch, they went through the roof.
Not as high as now. Less high than now. That is true.
They've gone up. The cost of this leadership frenzy we've had the last few days, I've been told by some of the Treasury, for about £2 billion. If we go into a leadership election, weeks and months of this, it's going to be a hell of a lot more. That's a very, very expensive debate. And the other thing, let me just finish this point. The other thing that Keir Starmer's done is, at times of real peril for this country, whether it's when Donald Trump trucking Zelensky out of the White House like a failed contestant on The Apprentice, when the Straits of Hormuz were closed, he has actually convened different leaders around the world, brought a sense of calm, stability, international law, values, our national interest to the fore. And I think he would be really missed on the global stage. So right now, when the world is in crisis, when our economy is in crisis, when people at home are in a cost of living crisis, don't make the crisis worse by having a leadership.
The bond market's not interested in Keir Starmer going, so we put the bond markets in charge of our policy. We might as well not have a government. But why do we not let the bond markets?
Yeah, it is a fact. And the problem is the leadership contest.
It's terrible.
So that's why we need a leader and a programme that's going to calm the bond markets and is going to bring a programme forward that the British people like.
Yeah, but his point is...
We've got a leader who calms the bond markets. Replacing him would leave the bond markets in turmoil.
And make union members poorer. They haven't been calm for a while. Since Rachel Reeves' first budget, they haven't actually been calm.
But the point about the bond market's making union members poorer.
We have to go to the financial institutions and explain what the programme is, that the borrowing is going to be to invest in the country, to get this country back on its feet and get people into a place that they're happier with their government.
Well, they did that.
I'm sorry.
They put 24 billion into the NHS.
I admire you in lots and lots of ways, and I really, I think you've done actually lots of good. There is a but coming.
Is there a meeting or a process?
There is a but coming. I don't think sending you out to global financial institutions would actually calm them down.
I didn't demand to go.
I think many qualities, but I don't think you've got that.
I didn't demand to go.
I'm offering to do that. I'm offering to do that on behalf.
You're not in
of
the Labour Party.
I'm not in the Labour Party, but I can talk finance.
But Andy Burnham's riled the bond markets, hasn't he? And that is problematic, isn't it?
Well, I don't think he's gone out and riled the bond markets. What they're saying, the bond markets, is they want Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. They don't want this country to change in favour of working people. They like the people that they've got.
That's not what they're saying.
That is not a democracy. Well, the effect of that is...
They don't like changing if they don't know what they're changing to.
Well, that's why I'm saying we have to have a... And that's why I'm saying we have to have a programme that deals with that.
They've done a workers' rights bill.
It came right down
raised the minimum wage.
So
there's lots of things you can do, but you're working within the envelope of, I'm afraid, what the markets will tolerate. And we saw what happened when the government tried to step out of what the markets tolerated. You got Liz Truss, and that I don't want the Labour Party to inflict that kind of moment on British people.
You've already done it. Thank you very much. Overnight, it's gone from her height was 4.7%. It's now at 5.8.
You're talking about a time when there's a war in the Middle East. You know very well what you're talking about.
We had a war in Ukraine as well. The oil price was also impacted. Honestly, they've managed to set that record overnight. They have done worse. And by the way, if it doesn't...
You're just making a silly political point on this. It's not
a political point, it's a financial point. But and it is a financial point that's costing us way over 100 billion. But and as you say, the Treasury will be looking at days, it'll cost billions more each day. But it's because of uncertainty. So it's not whether they like Keir and Rachel or whatever. There was, the crying in the chamber where that was the interpretation that was taken. That's not how it works.
They like the fiscal rules.
It was, they like some rules from a Labour Party. We all do, thank God. But the reality is you do have to have the confidence of the markets. Right now, they'll be less confident because they don't know what they're going to and Mick, what the risk is.
The risk is that some of these leadership contenders are akin to a lettuce.
But the Labour Party cannot go back to a position where it just says Keir Starmer is going to be the leader for the next 5 years.
But they need to choose very carefully. Because we all chose Rishi Sunak. The MPs all chose Rishi Sunak. The problem we have is the members choose, and you've got the unions and the members choosing. So, it's a different audience.
Look, I agree with you on that. The prospect of a Labour leadership contest, we know what it means. You get all these people pandering to different sexual
people
interests,
like Mick.
Posturing, positioning.
And his
you
unions.
get all this speculation about what they're going to do, who's going to be the chancellor. When we're in crisis, I just think to do that to British people,
but he's
do
put us in crisis.
Do that to their living standards, what their mortgage rates. I think that is the kind of unserious act by an unserious party, which I associate with the Tories, not with Labour.
Tom, you know Keir Starmer well. Have you spoken to him in the last few days?
No.
I mean, we interviewed him a couple of weeks ago on this programme, and he said the person he would listen to about whether to quit or not was his wife, Vic. Do you think he's having those kind of conversations now, really and truly? He's got to be looking at his future and thinking, is time up?
I just spent part of the evening talking to someone who's been with him, not Vic, I have to say, with him over the last few days. And front and centre of the Prime Minister's mind was, if I walk away, in some ways, you can blame him. It's been horrible, and it's a huge burden on him and his family. If I walk away, it'll be me doing this to the country, unleashing this chaos, and I don't want to be the person to do that.
He's already done that. He has already done that.
We go round in circles as you keep saying that. But look, I'm trying to give you a bit of insight into where his mind is. He doesn't want to be the person who makes a really precarious situation worse. Now, that is not to say he doesn't acknowledge that he's made mistakes. I think you may end up now in a place where over the next few weeks and months you'll see a recognition that Andy Burnham probably should come back to Parliament at some point, at the right time, in a by-election which is the right place and the right, and a recognition that maybe before the next election, maybe well before the next election, there'll be some sort of leadership contest, which might involve Keir Starmer, it might involve other people, and we'll see what happens. Because the idea of this sort of hyper-political environment now, this sort of, 70 camera crews outside Downing Street, it's just not what this country needs. And I do hope a tiny little glimmer of optimism that people are going to step back from the brink tomorrow and say this is not the right time, and Wes Streeting may agree as well.
Tiny bit of optimism.
Well, I mean,
you're betting against it.
I'm not betting against it. I think it may be that wise heads have prevailed.
Right.
Who knows?
Well, Tom, it's fantastic to have your insight and thoughts. Thanks very much. I mean, it's an emotional moment, isn't it, really?
I think it's been overly emotional, and what we need is calm and reason at them.
Well, it is now 8 o'clock. This is a special edition of the Cathy Newman Show on another day when the Prime Minister has been fighting for his political survival. At his cabinet earlier, Sir Keir Starmer told his team he will not be stepping down and that no leadership contest had been triggered. The main development this evening is that the Health Secretary and the man touted as waiting in the wings to take over, Wes Streeting, will meet Sir Keir Starmer tomorrow ahead of the King's speech. Well, over the course of today, Labour has descended into open division over the PM's future. 4 ministers have resigned and joined at least 80 MPs urging him to quit, while more than 100 others are warning against a leadership contest. Let's go back now to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. Sam, where are we at right now?
Allies of the Prime Minister are hoping, just hoping, that they have created a glimmer of opportunity for the Prime Minister after another bruising day. 87 Labour MPs have come out calling for Keir Starmer to quit. 4 ministers have also resigned today. There is something of a sense of vacuum at the moment because the 2 leading potential contenders in a future leadership contest have not said anything. Wes Streeting has been silent, so has Andy Burnham, and that is causing some jitters amongst some of the many, many MPs that have come out and called for Keir Starmer to resign. Tomorrow is another big day. There's the King's speech. There is a sort of cessation of hostilities until that happens and King Charles leaves Westminster at around lunchtime. Let's see what it's like when the gloves are off in the Commons in the afternoon. Wes Streeting is due to come out publicly on Thursday. Is it really the case that figures like Andy Burnham will stay silent for that long?
Sam, great to hear from you. Thank you very much. We'll keep you updated with any breaking news. Sam will bring it to you. Well, a few minutes ago, I spoke to the Home Office Minister, Mike Tapp, who's a big loyalist. Mike Tapp, 90-plus MPs now want the Prime Minister to go, including some of the Cabinet. Some of the ministers have quit. It's impossible for him to go on, isn't it?
Well, I think what we've got to remember at this point and be really clear on is that there quite simply is no leadership contest. There's a set of rules that need to be met, and just to be clear on that, that means that one candidate who may wish to challenge has to have 80 names on a bit of paper or whatever, and that's the challenge then open. That's not happened. We've got around 80, 90 rebels who've said that they don't support the Prime Minister at this point. But the Prime Minister will fight on, and he must fight on.
No leadership contest, but there's no leadership either, is there?
The reason that he must fight on is because stability is key, and putting country first is absolutely vital. That's what we said we'd do at the general election. That's what we're going to do now.
OK, but you're talking about
you're going to say this doesn't feel very stable. Today isn't very stable. You're quite right. And I had to apologise to my team in the Home Office for leaving to do some interviews because I want to get on with the job. The Cabinet want to get on with their job. Backbenchers want to represent their constituents.
But you can't get on with the job. That's the whole point.
Well, and that's the point. Keir Starmer is standing firm. That's the right thing, because without stability, we can't deliver for the country, and we will. Look,
but my point is you can't get stability back from this point. It's gone beyond that. It's a tipping point, isn't it?
There's massive issues at play here. Iran, Ukraine, cost of living, securing the borders. And the fact is, we won't deliver on those things further if we don't have that stability. It is key, and putting country first is vital. Okay. And look, I respect every single one of my colleagues, but every person that puts their head up and says that they don't have that confidence is a notch on the bedpost of Nigel Farage, because he's the only person benefiting from this. We do not want a reform government, so we've got to unite and push forward. And I'm really pleased to see Keir Starmer standing firm on this.
OK. You've apologised to your team in the Home Office, you've said. your boss in the Home Office, Shabana Mahmood, has called for the Prime Minister privately to go. How do you square that?
Well, this is speculation and rumour. I've seen nothing of the sort. I was in a meeting with the Home Secretary earlier who was delivering for the Home Office.
But you didn't have a word with her about
this. And she's
this.
made it very clear that she's staying there.
Did you talk about the leadership issue?
No, because we were focused on delivering for the country.
So you haven't had a conversation with your boss about the leadership?
Absolutely not. I'm focused, when I'm in the Home Office, on making sure that we fix the immigration system and secure the borders, as is Shabana Mahmood, our fantastic Home Secretary. Every Cabinet Minister is focused on delivering for the country, as is Keir Starmer, which is why it's really important that we maintain stability so that we can deliver for the country first. It was in our manifesto, and that's what we must deliver.
And you've made that point several times. But how can Shabana Mahmood be 100% focused on her job when she's also privately telling the Prime Minister to quit?
Well, that's rumour and speculation. I'm not going to comment on that.
We've established that to be the case.
It's rumour and speculation. I've seen Shabana at work today, and she's absolutely focused on delivery. I've seen a number of ministers today as well who are also focused on delivery. I've spoken.
What about Wes Streeting? Is he focused on delivery?
Countless backbenchers and MPs over the last few days who are focused on keeping Keir Starmer because he's the Prime Minister. We're 2 years in. We can't judge the Prime Minister after 2 years. That happens at general elections.
OK, is Wes Streeting focused on delivery?
I haven't spoken to Wes Streeting, but I've absolutely no doubt he's done a fantastic job so far with the NHS cutting those waiting lists. We've introduced some really strong policy for the country, but of course we need to go further. I'm not saying everything's great, by the way, because the local elections absolutely reflect that. But the way that we deliver for the country is by putting the country first, and that only comes with stability.
Is Wes Streeting putting the country first?
The markets reflect that.
Is Wes Streeting putting the country first?
I've no doubt Wes Streeting will put the country first, but I haven't spoken to him directly.
Right.
But he's done a fantastic job with the NHS.
You're speaking in the past tense, as if he's about to quit.
He's doing a fantastic job with the NHS. Record investment, waiting lists are coming down. That saves lives. That's what the Labour Party do. Right. We also need to secure the borders. We also need growth and stability. There's international events. There's Iran, there's Ukraine, there's the cost of living crisis. There's so much to battle.
You've made that point. My question about Wes Streeting is that he's going in to see the Prime Minister, reportedly. He may tell the Prime Minister to quit. He may resign. Would you like to see him stay in the Cabinet?
Well, my view is, again, that's speculation and rumour. I've heard nothing of the sort.
Would you like him to stay in the Cabinet?
Has said that. I think he's a fantastic Health Secretary, and I'd absolutely love him to stay in that position.
Rather than be leader.
I'm a junior minister in the Home Office. That's what I'm focused on, ensuring that we fix the immigration system and secure the borders. That's what needs to be done.
So what's your message to Wes Streeting, to Angela Rayner, to Andy Burnham, all in their different ways considering their future at this point?
What I'll say is there is no leadership contest. There is not one person who's got 80 names behind them. We've got a Prime Minister. He's 2 years into a 5-year term with a massive mandate. We have to give him that chance to deliver. And to deliver, he needs stability.
Well, I'm joined now by Tonia Antoniazzi, who has called on the PM to step down. Tonia, according to Mike Tapp there, everyone in the Home Office is just getting on with the job.
Well, they've lost a minister today, so he didn't mention that Jess Phillips has gone, did he? One of his colleagues has actually wrote the most, cutting letter that lays out why Keir Starmer needs to stand down. And it is upsetting, and it's something that you think long and hard about as an MP. But for me, the trigger point was, what was his speech, to us all.
It was only yesterday. It feels like a lifetime ago.
It does feel like I was going to say about 3 days ago. Mm-hmm. But it's just so disappointing. What we've seen in the Senate, what we've seen in Scotland, in the local elections in England, on the doorstep, he's not a popular guy. And I feel really bad because he's a very nice man. And he's he's a man of integrity, as I've said today. I really wish we weren't in this situation, but we are.
He didn't mention Wales in the speech, did he?
He mentioned Port Talbot,
which
is where the steelworks is.
Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, did that surprise you? That it wasn't...
Well, I was offended, to be honest with you. In fact, I've had a text message off a constituent who's a friend who just basically said it was that speech that pushed me over the edge as well, and I don't blame you for doing what you've done. And yes, I understand that there are going to be different opinions in the party, But I listened to Margaret Hodge on the Today programme, and she was saying this is not factional. This is not factional. It's not the right wing of the party eating the left wing or vice versa. This is us just wanting better for our constituents and for the United Kingdom. And sadly, he just doesn't cut through on the door anymore.
Well, the problem is he's called you bluff, though, hasn't he? You're going to have to dig him out of there.
Well, we'll see. I feel like I've done the right thing. I know I've stood up and said, look, Keir, time to go. And if he goes, Mike was saying there in his interview that there aren't 80 names on a ballot paper yet, or there isn't a name on a ballot paper. Well, no, there isn't a name on a ballot paper yet. But we're going to see one emerging, maybe two emerging pretty soon.
Oh, you're confident of that?
Yes.
Have you been in touch with Wes Streeting or?
No, not personally.
Andy Burnham. But, all right, so you're in touch with their camps, as it were? I
have spoken to a few people, but, I would love to see the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones, put his name in the hat. Now, whether he does or not is another thing. But when he was the chair of the Select Committee, the Bays Select Committee, he absolutely tore people apart. He was absolutely brilliant, and that's what we need. We need that drive and determination. We need that can-do, get-it-done attitude.
He was out defending the Prime Minister, though, this morning.
Well, that's his job, isn't it?
Yeah. You think he might quit, though?
I've got no idea. I'm not speaking on behalf of Darren. That's up to him.
But what's your message to the Cabinet, who have sort of privately made their views known, but no one's stepped over the brink yet, have they?
Look, the thing is, we've got backbenchers like myself. Then we've had some PPSs. We've had some ministers today. Tomorrow, out of respect, I'm not doing any media, and I'm not expecting colleagues to do any, because it's the King's speech. And so
it's a bit embarrassing, isn't it, that you're going to haul the monarch down here, and you don't really have a sort of functioning government at the moment.
Well, people are, as Mike said, Siobhan is working. People are working. They are functioning. That's a bit harsh to say that.
Dysfunctioning.
Well, I think there has to be a shift, and I know it's upsetting for people. And I didn't want to be here on this sofa having this conversation with you, Cathy, because I think it is upsetting. You've seen it in the Tory party. The country deserves better.
Give us, just finally, before I bring in the other occupants of the sofa, and we're glad you are on the sofa, despite the circumstances that, I know it's difficult for you. But give us just a bit more of a reflection on the feeling in Wales about those terrible losses for the Labour Party.
Look, people are angry. When we were knocking doors on polling day, I said, well, have you been to vote? Yes, I voted Reform. And I was like, well, why? Well, Nigel Farage has got some great policies. Well, one, you're not voting for Nigel Farage. Two, what policy? And it was like immigration. That's a UK government issue. It's not a Senedd election. It's not devolved. So, Farage is playing a blinder here, isn't he? Absolutely selling himself as the #1 top act. He's a backbencher like me at the end of the day. He's an absolute disgrace, and he does not, represent my constituents, and he won't deliver for them because he's not the one in Wales in the devolved government.
You made the point that, Keir Starmer is effectively acting as a recruiting sergeant for Reform. You didn't use quite those words, but I mean, that's the point here that Tonia's making, isn't it?
Yeah, but the alienation has been there before the election. I was down in South Wales as a trade union leader, used to go all around the country doing various meetings. Everybody in South Wales predicted this result before Labour were elected. Yeah. And the thing that would have stopped that was a dynamic government that would have pulled people back. What's going to happen in my village? What's going to happen in my region or in my country, in the case of Wales and Scotland? They're just disappointed that it hasn't happened. They can't see that the Tories are going to deliver. They can't see much from the Liberal Democrats. Some people have gone to Greens. I don't think they're staying there, personally. The danger is if this government doesn't lift off, whoever is the leader, we will get a Reform government, and that will be a national disaster, far bigger than any twitch in the bond markets. It will be a crisis for everybody who cares about this country. That's where Keir Starmer is. He is an obstacle to that, I'm afraid. I don't want that to be the case.
Yeah, but plenty of people
Keir
voted
Starmer gets
Reform.
lumbered with that. But he's got to make a decision that clears the way for a new beginning for Labour in the next 2.5 years.
Plenty of people voted Reform. I mean, it's like Hillary Clinton calling voters the deplorables, isn't it?
Populism is popular. We've just got to understand, because if you've got no track record to defend, you've got no plans you need to say, and you just tell everybody it's all motherhood and apple pie, of course it's going to be popular, and it's especially popular when there's hard times. But throughout history, it's been the same. That's when you get the rise of populism, and the motherhood and apple pie, or even worse, absolute downright lies. And I agree, by the way, if he did get elected, because they are even more clueless. I mean, literally, look at the calibre. Half of their councillors, well, not half of their councillors, but a lot of councillors overnight after they got elected had to resign because they were unsuitable people. It's a cult around one man, which is Nigel Farage. And
you say it's a cult, but, he's pretty successful, isn't he?
Yes.
I mean, he's one of the most consequential leaders.
Populism. Populism is successful until you have to try it, and then it's a disaster.
I'm just saying, if I had £5 million in my bank account, I'd be popular
Have you
as
not
well.
got that from that guy yet, the crypto guy? Did he not? He's been in touch with me.
You have to pay tax on that, though.
Yeah, I mean, you get bankrolled by people like Nick,
Polanski's council tax with it. There you go. That would be a collegiate thing to do.
There is a definite alienation in the country. It's at all levels. Middle-class people are alienated in this country because they feel the country's not moving forward.
Yeah. We've had low growth.
Working-class people are alienated because jobs, when you've got them, are low quality, low pay, and the cost of living is really high. We have to do something about the way this country works, and somebody's got to come through that can articulate that. They've got to say, I know what the problems are. I may not be able to resolve them immediately, but here's our programme to address these things.
I never thought you'd agree with each other so much.
I fear he may have the wrong diagnosis, though. And this is...
Here we get to the meat of it.
The wrong programme, the wrong process.
But it's true,
we have another meeting,
didn't have a real programme either. It was management, wasn't it?
It's supposed to be growth, right? That is actually what we all need. We have been suffering from low growth, and it does... And that was, to be fair, the mission of the Labour Party. It's just we haven't got any growth still.
Well, I'm just amazed to find so much agreement up that end of the sofa. I'm sure we'll find something to disagree on later. Tonya, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts about what needs to change and why. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, is in Downing Street. Interesting to hear Tonya reiterate what you were saying, that MPs tomorrow feeling like they have to keep stum because of the King's speech.
That's certainly the view here in Downing Street, yes. I mean, no doubt some maverick backbenchers may spoil the truce before the King's speech tomorrow. I can tell you, Cathy, a car we believe to be the Prime Minister's car and another, what I think is a police car, have just arrived back here. Now, we're speculating here. The Prime Minister did go on a visit to meet some apprentices this afternoon, but I have a theory. I wonder if he's had his regular weekly audience with the King tonight ahead of the King's speech tomorrow. That obviously is a huge event, the state opening of Parliament, suggestions this afternoon that the Palace were a bit uneasy about it going ahead and said, oh, do you really want it to go ahead given all the turmoil here? Well, things have calmed down a little bit here this evening, and there is certainly a feeling that the politicians want to just keep quiet for a few hours, certainly. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, after the King delivers the speech, the state opening from the throne in the House of Lords, MPs go back to the Commons. And, of course, the Prime Minister's got to make a big speech defending himself against critics on both sides of the chamber and, obviously, setting out the programme for Labour for, well, a year or so. Will the Prime Minister see out the whole of this session of Parliament that starts tomorrow?
Well, yeah, and if you're right that he has indeed seen the King, I would love to have been a fly on the wall for that meeting. John, thank you very much. I know you'll keep us posted as the evening progresses. We're here until 10 p.m. with a special edition of this show. Well, let's bring in the Labour Mayor of the West Midlands now, Richard Parker. Richard, I wonder if you could clear up this speculation that started on our sofa here by David Blunkett about a meeting that the mayors are having in Downing Street tomorrow. Are you part of this?
I'm not aware of any meeting, actually. And normally, if the Prime Minister invites mayors to meetings, he invites all of us. So I've not, honestly, I've not had an invite. I'm actually I'm in London tomorrow for a dinner with some funders in the evening. And then I am actually in number 10 hosting a discussion with the Football Foundation on Thursday morning. But to be clear, I haven't been invited to any meeting with the Prime Minister in Downing Street tomorrow.
Well, if you do get a word with him in your journey into number 10, what would you be saying to him tonight?
Look, I think probably not more than what's been said already, that they're a terrible set of election results and they hit many of my good friends and colleagues across this region. And it sent, I think those results sent a very clear message to all of us elected as Labour politicians that there needs to be a serious, meaningful, a material reset. And we need to do that really quite quickly. I've not been asking for the Prime Minister to step down, I want to be clear about that, but I am really clear that we need to deliver that reset that will deliver improvement in our communities, improve people's lives and start to make a difference in some of those communities that feel understandably overlooked and left behind, and we need to start delivering for them.
Well, after that speech yesterday from the Prime Minister, do you have any confidence that he can do what you're asking?
It's not about speeches, in my view. It is about deeds and actions. But also, I'm in a position where I have benefited from, working with the government. We've had record levels of transport investment. We're now turning around the levels of employment in the region, making big improvements through the skills funding I receive. We've got record levels of international investment into the city of Birmingham, the region, which is creating more jobs. I want to build on that foundation here, and I want to build on the good work I'm doing with the government in this region that has helped people that live here. We need to tell our story better, and we need to do better. But I think, that's my position, and I am looking forward to and waiting for, the response from the Prime Minister and the government in terms of what we're going to do differently on the ground to improve the lives of the people in the communities that I represent.
You've said that it's about deeds rather than words, or words to that effect, which was much the same language that the Home Office Minister Jess Phillips used when she quit. She said that the Prime Minister simply hadn't acted, for example, on measures to protect children. I mean, this is pretty serious stuff that you're not getting deeds out of the Prime Minister. That was her view.
So there have been deeds, and I've witnessed them. I talk about record levels of funding for transport, the difference we're making on the skills agenda. Also, the trade deal, the revised trade deal that we did with the US, that could have had, or the original had, terrible impact on the automotive industry here in the West Midlands, saved tens of thousands of jobs. We couldn't have done that if the government and the team at Number 10 hadn't worked with me, and particularly JLR here in this region, to ensure that we got the possible deal, trade deal, to address the tariff issue with the US. So we have done great things, but there is more to do. People are impatient for change, and quite rightly so. And what I expect from the Prime Minister and the government going forward is, a new set of policies, clear actions that can be delivered more quickly, that will do what I said originally, that will deliver people for people across my region, the region I represent, give them, the young people, a hope of a better future here, and the hope for all our people in our communities that the places in which they live have a better future too.
And if you don't get that in the next few weeks, would you like to see your fellow mayor, probably the most high-profile mayor, Andy Burnham, back in the Commons, relinquishing his mayoralty in Manchester, back in the Commons, and then in with a chance then of leading himself?
Look, I'm not going to deal with sort of hypotheticals at this point. The Prime Minister is still in situ. I want myself and my fellow mayors to work with the government to deliver the change that we promised, but we need to deliver increasingly quickly to make the sort of differences that I want to demonstrate to our communities, that will demonstrate to our communities that as a Labour mayor for the West Midlands, working with a Labour government, we're delivering the improvements that they expect from us, and we need to do that really, really quickly now.
So are you a bit tired of his manoeuvring then, Andy Burnham and his allies?
Look, I rate Andy really highly. He's been a great help to me. This is my first role in politics. He's been a great mentor. He's a great man. He's a great mayor of Greater Manchester, and he's got a great political future. And so I'm not tired of him at all. I applaud the work he's done in Greater Manchester, and I want him to succeed.
Richard Parker, thank you very much for joining us. Well, let's speak now to the MP, Chris Curtis, who's co-chair of the Labour Growth Group, who called for the PM to go here on Sky News. The Labour Growth Group have been meeting tonight, and he's just stepped out of that meeting to speak to us. Chris, what was the mood?
That's not quite a fair description of what we've just been doing, I'm afraid, Cathy. I and many other people from across the Labour movement, other MPs, have just been setting out our new report, An Honest Day, which sets out our vision for what the kind of change that is needed for Britain to start fixing the broken bits of the state and to start getting Britain moving back in the right direction again. You can look it up online. It's a fantastic report that we've been working on for many months. And I think it's particularly important in weeks like this, because I know many people have been talking about process, we've been talking about numbers, have been talking about leaders, but one of the things that I think is challenging in the Labour Party at the moment is that we haven't been talking enough about ideas. And it's only when Labour Party has been led with ideas that we've been able to change Britain for the better, and that's what we're trying to insert.
But no change can happen at the moment because you're in a circus situation, as David Blunkett said earlier on this show. You know, you're disrupting any chance of the Prime Minister bringing that change, aren't you?
Well, look, I think that clearly when this number of MPs have come out and said that they think that a change of leadership is required, and I added my voice to that chorus, it's going to be very difficult to put that genie back into the bottle, and a change of leadership is probably coming at this stage. The only question is how quickly it comes about and what that process is. But as we go through that process, I don't think it should just be a conversation about the process and about the personalities. We also need to have a conversation about ideas, about what our diagnosis is of what's gone wrong with Britain, about why we think this government hasn't, under Keir Starmer's leadership, been able to bring about change quickly enough, and how the next leader may be able to. And that is one of the things that we've been talking about and setting out in the report that we've released today.
But before you get to that point, you've got to have someone who's prepared to, you know, put up or shut up. And, you know, Wes Streeting, for example, going in to see the PM tomorrow, would you like to see him stand for the leadership and get this out into the open?
Well, look, there are many talented people who might be interested in running for the Labour leadership. I can't speak for any of them, nor can I speak for any other MPs. I can only speak for myself. Wes is incredibly talented if he were to put his name forward. But I think what we need is we need to ensure that there is an orderly process, a transition that happens as quickly as possible, because we can't have this dragging out for too long. We need to have certainty about the future direction of the Labour Party in this government, and I hope everyone can come together and start setting out this process, because it's clear when you look at the numbers, nearly 100 MPs now have come out and said that they think it's time for leadership. You can't put that genie back into the bottle, and we do need to start now talking about what comes next and how we get there.
Well, I mean, has Wes Streeting got the guts to stand up and launch a challenge? Because, I mean, it looks a little bit like he's bottled it at the moment.
I can't speak for Wes Streeting. I haven't spoken to him, I'm afraid, for quite some time. I'm sure if you stand outside Downing Street tomorrow, you can have a conversation with him before he goes in to see the Prime Minister. But speaking for myself for a minute, whether it's Wes Streeting, whether it's anybody else who wants to put their hat into the ring, what we need at this stage is a process. I don't think you can put the genie back into the bottle. It's clear that there are large numbers of MPs, myself included, who have a lot of respect for the Prime Minister, a lot of time for what he has done for both the party and the country, but do not think he is the right person to take us into this next stage of government and into the next general election. Therefore, the only question really is how we can set out as two questions. The first is how we can set out a process and a transition to that new leadership. And secondly, as we go through that process, we need to be discussing ideas and policies and a vision for government that can win back all of those voters that we've sadly lost since the general election.
Chris Curtis, thank you very much for joining us. Well, earlier, Sam Coates took me through what's been happening today and what it tells us about the Prime Minister's chances of survival. Sam, I've come to see your cave of rebels. Wow, there's a lot of names here.
There certainly is. I mean, when you look at it, actually, to be honest, Cathy, I don't think it's survivable for this reason. Right, this is where it started on Saturday night with Catherine West. She opened the floodgates. Look at all of these. Quite a lot of the people from the left of the party, when they came out, I'm not sure Downing Street were too worried, but here's the lot that came out on Monday. And you've got the youngest, the oldest, you've got some from the right of the party, as well as all of those ones from the left. This is when it started flashing red on the Downing Street board. But can I take you over here? Because this is where it got mega dangerous last night and today, because they started to be from the government. Joe Morris, Wes Streeting's PPS, junior ministerial role, another PPS, another PPS, another PPS. Right, that was bad enough. Then this morning, the ministers began. Miatta Fahnbulleh, close to Andy Burnham and to Ed Miliband. Alex Davis-Jones, another minister. Jess Phillips, possibly the most famous person to go so far. And look at this guy, Zubir Ahmed. You might not have heard of him. Well, you'll have heard of him, but our viewers might not have
He's in the health department.
He's in the health department. He's another one. Look at them. Look at them. There are just so many. What does that tell us? I just think when you look at all of the people that we're standing in front of, it's really hard to see the Prime Minister come back from all of this.
But he's done a bit of a fight back, though. Got his loyal names out there.
Certainly has. And what there isn't is agreement on where to go next. Should we look at the runners and riders?
Absolutely.
Here, look, we know some of them. Wes Streeting, he's meant to be ready to go. Andy Burnham, if he can find a seat, we're told he has, but we haven't been told which one yet. Shabana Mahmood, not that popular, but she gave it both barrels to the Prime Minister. You know, some dark horses here, less popular than she was. But there's so much division in the Labour Party between all of them. I genuinely couldn't tell you which one of them is going to get it.
And also, none of them are saying anything either. They've all gone to ground, haven't they?
No, because of the rules, it's really, really hard to work out what's going to happen next. Should we look at those? Because there are two paths that we can have. One is where they basically try to get Keir Starmer out because he's refusing to resign, and then 81 MPs need to back a challenger, and then there's a contest. Starmer's automatically on the ballot, and we see who wins. So that's if he needs to be dragged out of office, and they can beat him like that. Or he agrees with his cabinet that he's going to stand down, and then him and the cabinet and the national executive all agree a timetable or an interim leader, and then it all goes to an election.
And that's what they hope. I mean, I just bumped into one of the ministers who's gone outside, and they said they hope that he would come to his senses and do it himself. Any sign of that?
We have not seen much agreement today.
Well, the MP, Diane Abbott, has joined us on the sofa. Diane, is this a coup that's been launched against the Prime Minister?
No, I think calling it a coup is quite misleading. You know, you have to have a contest for the leadership. And I'm astonished, Prime Minister's a wonderful man, I'm sure, but I'm astonished that he can have 80 MPs placing votes of no confidence. He can have the huge reform majority we got last week, and he himself is not considering his position.
Yeah, he's got a massive majority in the Commons, so he's digging in.
The majority is the Labour Party's majority. People talk as if we're the United States and the Prime Minister gets voted for separately from, you know, actual members of Parliament. It is the Labour Party which has the majority.
You don't think he can take credit for that, he and Morgan McSweeney?
Morgan McSweeney, let me not talk about Morgan McSweeney. Let me just repeat that it's the Labour Party that has the mandate. And he, with what is the most disastrous local authority election result in living memory, he should consider his position.
Well, but he's not, so you're at a stalemate, aren't you? I mean, do you want Wes Streeting, Andy Burnham, you know, Angela Rayner, whoever it is, to sort of put up and get on with it?
I want there to be a properly organised selection process, and we'll see who emerges.
And that will take weeks and weeks. And meanwhile, the bond markets will go into a, hissy fit.
British politics and British Parliament can't be run, at the behest of the bond markets. We have to do what's right. We have to do what's right, and we have to choose the right person to be leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister, and we have to do it as quickly as possible, but we have to do it properly.
Well, we're all going to be pretty poor if we don't pay heed to the markets, though, aren't we?
Now, come on. I mean, if the British government is going to be completely dominated by the bond market, MPs might as well go home.
Do you want
to borrow money? Well, there's that. Sorry, there's that.
Or cut the welfare bill.
There's that, but it's whether that's something that... It's whether the Labour Party wants to cut the welfare bill, as you're saying, and spend the money on armaments and nuclear weapons, and that's something for discussion.
Well, Gillian, what do you make of that? Provocative question from Diane.
Well, I think we do need to spend on defence, actually, and I think Mick would hopefully be happy because there'd be lots of jobs in the defence industry and there'd be lots of high-quality jobs. But, you know, we are in a very uncertain world, and we do know that Donald Trump has definitely changed his stance towards NATO and towards Russia, Ukraine. So these things, whilst all this psychodrama, which it has now become, is happening, all these things are really important. We still don't know what's going to happen in Iran. Is that ceasefire over or not? You know, are they negotiating? All of this is really important.
That is all true.
And we've got no one leading here.
That is all true. But British politicians, the community, we have to discuss whether what we want to do at the end of the day is slash welfare and put it into nuclear weapons. We just have to discuss it.
Not just nuclear weapons, but, you know, we can't
armaments.
afford to go on
Drones, I think, now.
Drones, drones, armaments, just discuss it. Don't think you can just slide it past and people don't notice.
Do you see, you know, Andy Burnham and think there is a leader who will be speaking the language you speak?
Do you know, I've known Andy Burnham for very many years. In 2010, there was a leadership election, a Labour leadership election, and there was the two Miliband brothers, there was Ed Balls, there was Andy Burnham, and there was me. And all of the guys... Yeah, right. I was the candidate. I was the left candidate, right? And so I went day after day after day, speaking from platforms in town halls and all the rest of it. So I heard them, all of them, several times a week. And I have to tell you, at that point, they were interchangeable. Now, maybe Andy Burnham is very left-wing now. I don't know.
Do you think he's changed his tune?
Well, I think he's learned a lot from being in Manchester and getting things done. He was on platforms with the RMT during the National Rail dispute about making transport accessible, and he's been successful in some of that stuff. So people do evolve, they do change. I don't believe people are stuck in the position they adopted when they were 18.
He's had many positions, I think. That's
the kind of pragmatist that successful politicians are, isn't it?
Yeah, is that fair enough?
So
he's changed
it's who's there available and is on offer that members have to make their mind
over
up.
that period of time, we're talking about maybe 16 years, people do evolve. I'm not saying people can't change and evolve. I'm sure I've evolved. All I'm saying is that I don't go for this automatic thing that, you know, Andy Burnham is this great left-winger. I just don't.
So is Angela Rayner more your gal?
Nobody's my girl or not my girl. I think Angela Rayner is extremely talented, and if she's able to...
Be on a dream ticket?
I don't know about a dream ticket. You know, I want to see who's actually going to run. I think the media is trying to voice different candidates on us. The party has to have a selection process. We have to see who's running, and we have to see who gets the vote.
But surely somebody has to make a programme that the whole party can support, come out of a programme and then prove that they can articulate that and implement it in the next 2.5 years.
And a plan before
That's
you...
more important
before you do it.
than razzmatazz and being an effective speaker. Attlee was probably the worst speaker we've ever had. But
that was a different era, though.
But he got on with the job. He got on with the job, and they were bold, and he wasn't from the left. You don't have to be the most left-wing person.
Talking about a plan, talking about ideas. You don't talk about ideas, you have ideas. You stick them down with a plan way before you get into government. So when you get into government, you can enact them. By the time they get to that, you'll be 3 years into the government.
But Diane, you've said the media's, you know, putting this and that candidate. Help us out. Who would you put in there?
It's not for me to say. I want to see...
But you just accused
not
them.
You. Not you.
Oh, yeah, you're not... You wouldn't be a sort of left-wing stalking horse candidate.
I did that 16 years ago. I think
you're not going to
move beyond that phase.
You know how that movie ends.
Done that.
We haven't got the right ending, though, Diane. It could change. It could be different.
Been there, done
But you
that.
want a proper left candidate, and the names that the media are currently...
candidate, and I want a proper selection process. That's all I want, on behalf of, you know, party members.
You know what? It's entirely possible there's a leadership contest in the next few days that kicks off, and the Prime Minister wins that.
Well,
that was quite a look, Diane.
It's theoretically possible, but he'd have to do that on the back of a programme. He'd have to tell
Well, he
people,
hasn't had a win for a
I'm
while,
going
to
to
be
do
honest.
this, which is different to what I've done already. Now, whether he's able to do that, the evidence of yesterday's speech was that he's not capable of doing that. I'm afraid to say that. Maybe he's saying I'm just consistent, but that's not what's resonating with people.
He isn't consistent. He's done 16
yesterday's
U-turns.
speech, and I watched it with great care, and I didn't hear a single new thing. And I was disappointed. I thought there might be a few things new.
Yeah, but you're a long opponent of Keir Starmer, aren't you?
No. I'm somebody that listens to people's speeches carefully, and I did it, and I think most people that know about the Labour movement didn't hear anything new, and that was disappointing.
When I said he might win the contest, you gave me what can only be described as a long, hard stare. What did that mean?
Well, it just means if he wins he wins, we'll all, you know, unite behind him.
You're very calm. You're very calm about it, but then this is a disaster for the party, a disaster for Keir Starmer personally. It's a disaster for the country because you know, we don't even know who our Prime Minister is going to be next week.
Oh, I think it'll be sorted out.
What, next week?
While. Well, I know it'll be sorted out, and it's a very important thing who the Prime Minister is. So we need to get it right.
And people at home are feeling pretty worried about their bills. They're worried about the future. They're worried about war.
You'd imagine we never have elections and never have periods of uncertainty. We do have elections on a cyclical basis, and when a parliament's dissolved, you don't know who the next Prime Minister is. The country doesn't dissolve. The business of government gets on. This has to be dealt with by the Labour Party. They have to get either Keir Starmer continuing through a process, which could happen, theoretically, or a new leader with a new programme. That is inevitable now. There's no other way. You can't just sit there like King Canute saying everything's not happening and the waves are going to go back.
It's unusual to get 4 in 4 years, though.
It is unusual.
Prime Ministers.
But then we might have one for 10 years. If we get the right one.
I mean, the King's doing the King's speech tomorrow. Now, we thought his biggest diplomatic challenge was going to be going to the States and managing Donald Trump and the White House. That was 2 weeks ago today.
You've got to read out a prepared statement. It's not that
biggest diplomat. No, that was hard.
To
His biggest diplomatic challenge is going to be navigating the civil war in the Labour Party on King's speech
Everyone
day.
will be very well behaved.
Well, I'm sure they'll be well behaved, but it won't change what he knows about the fact that we're in, you know, there's a bit of a chaos.
It may be in his mind, but we'll be very well behaved and very organised.
A very well-behaved Diane. Thank you very much for sitting on the sofa today. Well, tomorrow is the King's speech, as we've been hearing, where the monarch will set out the government's programme for the next session of Parliament, but it could all have a bit of a surreal feel. On this really surreal day in Westminster, I thought I'd come down and take a look at preparations for the King's speech. And you can see that some really lovely potted plants being put out, ready for the monarch to sweep down in his gilded coach, the Diamond Jubilee stagecoach, ready to give the speech tomorrow, which is reading out the government's programme. We know a little bit of what's in that speech. We know, for example, that the government wants to draw closer to the EU. We know that there's something on tackling anti-Semitism and nationalising British steel. What we don't know is if the Prime Minister is going to survive before or after that speech is read out. And if he doesn't, what happens to the government's programme? If someone else comes in to lead the Labour Party and become Prime Minister, do they tear up the King's speech? In which case, what was the point of getting the monarch all the way down here? Well, we can speak now to the former Conservative Deputy Prime Minister, Lord Michael Heseltine. Lord Heseltine, as someone who helped precipitate Margaret Thatcher's resignation, I wondered if you could give the rebels who are sort of hesitating at this point some advice on what to do.
Look, I am not a member of the Labour Party, and so trying to give advice to them would be totally pointless. I know what the trouble is for the Labour Party. They have got a real lack of confidence in the government because the living standards of the British people are falling. And there are 4 big reasons for that. First, Ukraine. Secondly, the Gulf and Gaza. Thirdly, the Brexit. And fourthly, the wealth-destroying taxes, which this government is responsible. And Keir Starmer cannot be blamed for the first 3. So the question I would ask is, would it make any difference if we have another Labour Prime Minister? And my conclusion is it won't, because I don't see how, after a Labour battle, we would get rid of the very harsh, wealth-destroying taxes. If anything, the candidates will be forced by the sort of constituency of MPs to go further in the wealth-destroying process. And it's quite apparent that Britain has a limited role, if any, to play in the great international crisis, which are overwhelming the world economy.
So, you know, what would be your thoughts then if a shift to the left by the Labour Party, or Keir Starmer continuing, or a chaotic leadership contest now makes it easier for reform to get into power?
Well, I believe that reform is a thoroughly nasty consequence of the people's lack of confidence in the level of living standards. I find that, look, I've lived long enough. I've seen it all before. We had Mosley and the anti-Semitism in the 1930s. We had Enoch Powell in the 1960s. And now we've got Nigel Farage, who's got a very curious record of anti-Semitism. All those people who came forward and said he was hissing gas chambers as a younger man, his personal defense of millions of tax revenue, which he says is nobody's business but his. And I just watched him the other day with 5 really heavy men walking alongside him. And I thought, I've seen this before.
I mean, of course, Nigel Farage would say he's a million miles from what you've just mentioned. But, you know, I take the point you're trying to make. I just wanted to come back to your challenge to Margaret Thatcher in 1990, because looking back now, with the benefit of time and distance, was it a feeling of ambition or public service that motivated you? And I'm trying to get inside the head of the cabinet ministers thinking about toppling the prime ministers now. What went through your head and might be going through theirs?
Well, I was faced with a very simple situation. I didn't precipitate Margaret's downfall. Geoffrey Howe did that. I knew that I'd been on the backbenches for 4 years and there'd been a lot of talk about my becoming leader. I knew the press would turn at once to me. And as I left the chamber, having heard Geoffrey's speech, I spoke to Michael Jopling, who was the chief whip earlier on and a good friend of mine. And I said, Michael, what the hell do I do now? And he said, you do nothing. You'll be leader of the opposition in 18 months. To which I said, I don't want to be leader of the opposition. And so I let my name go forward under the pressure of a very large number of colleagues. But it was the cabinet who talked to Margaret one by one and said she had to go. It was not me, indeed. When the stalking horse took place 18 months before she finally went, I conspicuously voted for her in order to stop people saying that I was actually backing the stalking horse.
But do you think there's the same issue for, you know, Wes Streeting or Andy Burnham, that, you know, these people are being talked about in the media? It could end up damaging their chances of actually getting elected. Is there a danger there to being the person who's talked about?
Well, if you're in front, lots of people try to undermine your position. That's life. There's nothing very complicated in that. But the really damaging situation is that a leadership campaign now in the Labour Party would be dominated by demands of the left wing to go further down their socialist route. And that will only make things worse. And I'm afraid I don't see, therefore, any improvement in the situation facing this government. And my own very clear view is we want a Conservative Party which understands the need for a constructive, middle-of-the-road party, pro-European, and determined to govern from the centre-right of politics.
Michael, just reflecting finally, you know, between 1979 and 2008, we had, what, 3 prime ministers? We're now potentially going to have had 4 prime ministers in 4 years. Do you worry that the country is becoming ungovernable?
Well, I think that you have to ask, when will these great crises issues improve? And I think it is arguable that we will see a response to Ukraine, and somehow or other they have to sort out the problems with Iran and the consequences in Israel. Those 2 things would have a serious beneficial effect. But in fact, the real solution is that Britain has got to get back to the heart of Europe. Brexit is a disaster, was a disaster from the very beginning, and it now requires somebody who has the courage to say it and in the last resort makes clear that they will never do a deal with Nigel Farage.
So, yeah, just to pick up on that point, Kemi Badenoch may be tempted by the siren call of uniting the right, doing a deal with reform. Your answer to that?
You will not unite the right by capitulating to reform. Reform is a nasty political phenomenon of extremist politics, and we've seen it all before. Never again, I hope.
Lord Heseltine, thank you very much for your time. Well, Gillian, let me put that final point to you. You know, really didn't mince his words on reform. I mean, clearly, Nigel Farage, I'm sure, would absolutely deny what he heard Michael Heseltine saying. What's your view?
I agree with him. I agree with him on that. Although I do think it's amazing that he's managed to get Brexit into the Labour leadership chaos, because that's obviously his number one issue. I don't agree with him on that. I think
well, the Prime Minister put it on the table yesterday in the speech, didn't he?
He kind of half did,
yeah,
in his usual way, which is it's actually worse than not doing it at all. He seems to take every situation and make it worse. That would be the worst of all worlds. So I think, but I do, on the point with reform, I agree with him. In fact, it is one thing we do all agree with, and it's not because they're, you know, winning in the polls or whatever, because actually they're coming down a bit in the polls. It's because we know they'll be useless. We know they overpromise. They will absolutely underdeliver. Their popularity of Nigel Farage will go down faster than Keir Starmer's, and that I would predict.
Let's see how they do. Let's if
they got
the jury
job.
Is out, because you know we'll see how they do in the local authorities.
Yeah.
But on this point on being in the heart of the European Union, rejoining that Lord Heseltine just made, I mean, would that make the economic difference that you know your party is?
Better relations and better trade with Europe would be better for everyone. We want it's part of the growth agenda that everyone's talking about.
He's talking about the single market, rejoining the single market.
But
rejoining the EU.
Going into a version of re-entry and being a taker of laws without ever having a say on it isn't something that my union believes in and isn't something that the people believe. I think it would even be more divisive.
And that's what Keir Starmer announced yesterday.
If we restart that debate on top of everything else, I think it will be a fundamental problem for the country.
But you were talking about the time for courage and bravery and courage of convictions. I mean, someone's got to have these difficult debates, haven't they?
Well, somebody's got to come up with a programme that people like. And going back to the Brexit agenda
it's
is
popular
nobody's.
now.
It's
a majority.
It's always about growth,
wasn't it?
And actually, most countries are growing more than Europe.
In the areas where Labour has lost its seats, it won't be a popular debate. So where they've got to win back those Labour heartlands, as they're called, which is a long time ago now, that will not be a popular debate. He needs to concentrate, or whoever it is, needs to concentrate on addressing the agenda in those constituencies and giving people a bit of hope that the country's going to get better.
You just let slip that you don't think it's going to be Angela Rayner by saying he.
I was talking about Keir Starmer.
How were you now,
the idea
he's going to win.
That he will continue. But whoever it is, he or she has to have a programme, as I keep saying. And nobody is talking about a programme. None of these people who are saying...
The Conservatives are. We've put out our alternative King's speech. I'll send you a copy.
I'll have to have a read of that tomorrow.
It's very good.
I can't get to sleep.
You'd actually agree with a lot of it. Stopping him. So would Donald Trump. Stopping immigration.
None of these politicians that you get on are actually saying what they will do. So it would be interesting when they break cover, will they say, here are the 5 things, 10 things, whatever it is. Ed Miliband had a tablet of doom. A tablet of doom at that time, and nobody can remember what was on that.
Ed Stone.
But nobody can remember.
Nor the missions, nor milestones, by the way.
Exactly. Nobody can remember any of those milestones. I can't. Nobody can remember what was in the Labour manifesto.
Because they were in place of a plan. Yeah. If they'd have had a plan... You know, when we came in after the last Labour government, so I wasn't in politics, but in education, and I looked at this a lot in education, they had a plan on school standards, they had a plan to academise, they had a plan to change how we taught maths and English, to improve our overall, you know, achievements. And they did all of that, and you could see it in the tables. So you need to look around and see who's doing things better. What is it we need to do to improve our schools, our health?
Spending to the bone, though, didn't you?
Well, to be honest, and I wasn't there either, but the no money left note, I think, was actually is true. And the reality is, when you haven't got money, it's very difficult. And whoever comes in, this plan on a sixpence, if you're not cutting welfare,
very few governments come in on the crest of a wave. I was looking at Ramsay MacDonald, the most insecure Labour government there's ever been, put in 100,000 council homes in the 10 months that they were in power and led the way for the council house boom. And you know,
I would agree. By the way, council houses, 100,000. We could probably get that done.
You can do that if you're bold. It's not left-wing, it's not right-wing. It's about delivering objectives, getting the architects going, getting the workers going. That plan for the Green New Deal that they had, that they dropped at the first hint of criticism, would now be starting to deliver jobs and changes on council estates. They were not bold enough in their own beliefs. They're scared of themselves. They're scared to be effective social democrats, which is a real problem.
Which is why they've U-turned 16 times, I guess.
Do you think whoever is the next leader should rip up the manifesto?
Well, nobody's reading it.
There was nothing
Nobody
in
can
it.
remember.
Go back to first principles.
First principles about delivering on housing, delivering on what employment's like, making people feel a bit better about their futures and giving people a few more bob in their pockets.
But you were elected on that manifesto.
Well, it's not worked.
It had 1.5
and they've got
million
whoever
votes.
leads has got to be...
People have to take... If you're going in the wrong direction and your navigation's wrong, you've got to reset. But they also need to
everyone
break...
would agree on. 1.5 million homes. We had them in our manifesto as well, and the previous time.
But they need to break
in their backyard,
They need to break with the Mandelson era. Right? This government has been dominated by Mandelsonism, by being careful.
Mandelsonism?
Yes,
Wow. Okay.
because it was all about not having a particular set of beliefs, not having an identity that is socialist or social democrat, about being bland and vanilla.
People might
People are fed up with that. People want to see a bit of passion and commitment in their politics, and that's what the next leader's got to deliver.
By the way, the next Mandelson papers are coming out, I think, next week.
They are.
Which is going to create even more chaos.
We'll get you back for that. Well, of course, the turmoil in Downing Street, as we've been thinking about, has been reflected in the markets. Government borrowing costs hit a near 20-year high today. Here's our economics and data editor, Ed Conway.
Well, we seem to be back on the roller coaster again, and once again, looking at charts like this. This is showing you the UK government bond yield. It's the cost of borrowing for the UK government, but it kind of affects all of us as well. It was around about 5% just last week. Then, of course, we had the local election results, and kind of after that, it started to push up. But the thing that's really sparked the latest increase is all of that leadership speculation that's been happening in the past 24 hours, and you can see how it went up really sharply. Then the Prime Minister came out and said, look, I'm staying. And as a result, it's kind of settled around about there, 5.1%. But it's worth just putting that into a bit of historical perspective. So 5.1%, this is the UK government 10-year government bond yield going back to 2008. And just for some context, that's 2022. That's the mini-budgets. That spike there. Well, as you can probably see, look, we are higher now than we have been since 2008 when it comes to UK government borrowing rates. And that's basically the market casting its judgment on the UK. And why are they doing that? Well, we'll come on to kind of the government side of it in a moment. But partly it's because, we have really high inflation in the UK. And obviously we're facing this energy price shock. And even before the energy price shock, this is showing you the average rate of inflation across other G7 nations. Here's what's striking. Look at the UK. That's the red line here. Look at where we are in relation to the rest. We used to be kind of middle of the pack, or kind of around about kind of average. And now we're above. We're a kind of an outlier when it comes to inflation. And that's before this shock that is coming our way in terms of inflation. So there's an inflation worry. And then on top of that, there's a fiscal worry. And what's that? It's basically the government has a lot of challenges right now, OK? And when you look at public spending, OK, that's that line there. As a percentage of GDP going all the way back to the 1940s, it is really high, OK? So the amount of public spending right now, just again, to show you some context, OK, it is at the kind of level. We've only seen a few times where it's been higher than it is right now. COVID in 2020, the financial crisis in 2008, in the 1970s, and the oil price shock. That's not very flattering when it comes to comparisons of public spending, and yet that's kind of where we're heading to at the moment. So public spending is high, and so too are taxes. If you look at taxes as a percentage of GDP, the total tax burden, that is also heading up to the highest level basically ever, certainly since the 1940s, and in the coming years, maybe even higher still. So taxes are going up, spending is high, and at the same time, look down here, this is debt interest. So that's the debt that we're kind of paying 5% or more on right now. Even before that, it was at the highest level, or one of the highest levels that we've seen in recent history. So put that all together, and people are wondering, OK, how are you going to sort that out? And the short answer is you need a strong government to be able to kind of deal with challenges like that. And that's kind of what it looked like Keir Starmer had. He had this stonking majority back in the last election, 411 MPs voted through, a landslide. But, of course, he hasn't been able to sort that out. And now people are looking at the polling, people out there in markets, looking at the polling, looking at what we saw in local elections. And what does that show you? Well, here's our kind of projection based on the national equivalent vote share. It shows there's potentially a hung parliament or a chance of a hung parliament and no majority. And that makes it even more difficult to deal with all these deep-seated problems that the UK has, which is why we're facing so much financial fallout.
Well, those graphs were pretty eye-popping, weren't they? I mean, that's what's at stake here, isn't it?
It is, and that's why I keep talking about the finances. If we hadn't have had COVID and we hadn't had the global financial crash and we hadn't have, spent a lot of money on that, which I don't think was the wrong thing. I actually had a woman come up to me, actually today, a pharmacist say, I just want to say thank you because the furlough saved my business. It was a pharmacy in London.
There was also a lot of corruption and
well, there was,
the VIP
but we
lane,
also
blah,
knew
blah.
that was going to happen because the Treasury said you've got two choices, do it quickly or take 6 months and do it properly and you won't get any fraud then, but you'll have no businesses left. That's what we were left with. Don't forget this was crisis. And I was in all of those meetings at the time, so I fully understood that that was a deliberate choice that we wanted to... We wanted to save the businesses, and the only way to do that was to know that some of them would be shell companies, but they're still going after them. They're still, trying to sort them out now.
Mick, brief thought from you on the bond
it was a lot of money.
Well, it's a challenge, but I do think we've got to explain, the government has got to explain what its programme is, and we're going to invest to retool the country, to get people training. I think we need a national youth training scheme, for instance, with real apprenticeships.
We've got one, real apprenticeships. That's what we put in place.
After
they were
destroying
brilliant.
them, they're not as real as they should be.
The one we had was brilliant, and I really care about this being the only degree apprentice in the House of Commons. It is actually a really good scheme.
I want to come back to this, much more to discuss.
Okay.
But it is 9 o'clock. This is a special edition of the Cathy Newman Show. The day is drawing to a close, and it appears Keir Starmer will live to fight another day. But, and it is a big but, the Prime Minister is going to meet one of his biggest potential rivals tomorrow as he tries to face down a backbench rebellion against his leadership. Well, earlier, Keir Starmer told his cabinet he's going nowhere, but 4 ministers have quit the government and more than 80 Labour MPs are saying he should quit. Tomorrow, before the King's speech, the PM will meet Wes Streeting. And for months, there's been talk that the Health Secretary is waiting in the wings, ready and willing to take over. Here's our political editor, Beth Rigby, with her take on another day of turmoil in the government.
The weekly gathering of Cabinet, but nothing run-of-the-mill about this.
Ed Miliband, is it time for Keir Starmer to stand down? Are you going to tell him to go, sir? Are you going to tell him to go? Can the PM hold on? Is it all over for Keir Starmer, sir?
A huge amount at stake.
Wes Streeting, are you going to challenge the Prime Minister? Wes Streeting, are you challenging for the Labour leadership, sir? What are you going to say to Keir Starmer?
For a Prime Minister teetering on the edge.
Are you backing Keir Starmer? Peter, are you backing Keir Starmer or Wes Streeting? Liz, are you backing Keir Starmer?
Now questions being openly asked about whether the Cabinet should call time on Starmer as calls for his resignation continue to grow from mutinous Labour MPs and ministerial aides. But the PM kicking off Cabinet by digging in, telling colleagues the last 48 hours had been destabilising for the government, that a leadership challenge had not yet been triggered, and as such, he and his Cabinet should get on with the job of governing. Cabinet over and the fight back in full throttle, loyalists lining up to voice support. Baroness Chapman, you have been a long-term ally and close friend of Keir Starmer's.
Yes.
You've known him a long time. How is he?
He's great. He's good. He's focused. He's resilient. He's determined. He's not... I've heard some people say that he is like obstinately, or being defiant. That is not at all his vibe.
The Prime Minister has my full support. The Labour Party has a process for triggering a leadership election. That has not happened So we all intend to get on with our jobs, and that's what I'm going to do.
Where was Cabinet, and what did everyone say when Keir Starmer said a leadership race had not been triggered?
Well, it's the fact. We've had a very purposeful Cabinet meeting talking about the big issues facing our economy and society.
Ms Kendall, what happened? What happened in the Cabinet?
This government will do what we were elected to do, which is serve the British people. The Prime Minister has my full support in this.
But then the ministerial resignations began. First, Miatta Fambule, Housing Minister. Then, the biggest name yet, Jess Phillips, the Safeguarding Minister, who told the PM, "I know you care deeply, but deeds, not words, are what matter." Next came Alex Davis-Jones, the Victims Minister, followed by Zabir Ahmed, a Health Minister and key Streeting ally. And in response, by late afternoon, another loyalist, David Lammy, was dispatched.
No one seems to have the names to stand up against Keir Starmer. And for those who are suggesting that he should stand down, they should say which candidate would be better. Let's get on with the business of running this country and government. That's what I've been doing today.
It's a little calmer in number 10 this evening. One insider tells me the mood is a lot better tonight than it was this morning, as Cabinet Ministers and more than 100 MPs come out publicly to support the embattled PM. I'm told by senior figures that many left-leaning MPs are rowing in behind Keir Starmer because they want to wait for Andy Burnham to be back in Parliament before they move against the Prime Minister. But it's all extremely uncertain. Over 85 MPs want Starmer gone. And there's a very open question as to whether Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, will try to trigger a leadership race. He comes to number 10 on Wednesday for a showdown with Starmer. For now, the PM adopting a keep calm and carry on approach, out meeting apprentices this afternoon. But as they embark on their careers, this is a Prime Minister mulling the end of his own. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, is in Downing Street. Starmer has got through another day, Sam. Given the last 72 hours or so since Friday's elections, that's a bit of a win, isn't it?
Yeah. Keir Starmer is in Downing Street tonight, and 24 hours ago, that wasn't a racing certainty. If you remember, 3 Cabinet Ministers went in yesterday, Shabana Mahmood in particular, punchy, saying he needed to set out a timetable to go. Now we have 87 Labour MPs who have said that the Prime Minister should go, and that includes 4 ministers, as Beth was just outlining. Now, there's something a bit weird going on, Cathy, which is there is talk, as Beth was reflecting, that this evening things are just a little bit better in Downing Street, that the Prime Minister has survived a day of incredible pressure and tumult. But the truth is that as we speak, we're 4 hours since the last ministerial resignation. We're already talking about a vacuum. I think perhaps that's all getting a little bit ahead of itself. Politics will pause for about 18 hours while we have the King's speech and King Charles comes to Westminster. But I suspect it will ramp up again. There is a divide in the Labour Party about what to do. All are united that Keir Starmer shouldn't take them into the next election, but there is division between those who want a sooner contest or a later contest, depending on whether they want Andy Burnham to come back and find a seat in Parliament. That is the division at the heart of the Labour Party. I think there's much more unity on the fate of the Prime Minister.
And Sam, I said you were in Downing Street. I mean, you've been there zipping to and fro, literally running, I believe, to and fro Downing Street today. But I didn't realise you'd snuck back into the office. I believe that's where you are anyway. So thank you very much for that. We do have John Craig in Downing Street in a little bit to bring us the latest updates. But let's go there now, actually. John, I think you're still in Downing Street now. It's hard to keep track of where everybody is. But things have calmed down a bit, have they, John?
Yes, there seems to be a sort of truce, if you like, a lull in hostilities, out of respect for the King, really, because the big day tomorrow, it's the state opening of Parliament, always a huge event. And, of course, the Prime Minister will have to go to Parliament for all the pomp and ceremony, where MPs go from the Commons to the Lords, you know, the knocking on the door of Black Rod, all that sort of stuff. The speech from the throne, then back to the House of Commons for the big debate between the Leader of the Opposition and the Prime Minister. The timings are, well, the King's speech is 11:35, all be wrapped up by about midday. The Commons will sit at 2:30 in the afternoon, and there'll be, as usually, a junior backbencher and then a veteran backbencher, then the Leader of the Opposition, then the Prime Minister. So the first time the Prime Minister's been in the Commons since all this blew up after the local elections last Thursday. Now, before that, of course, we believe that Wes Streeting is coming here for talks, showdown, discussion, call it what you like, with the Prime Minister. He wanted to see the Prime Minister, Mr Streeting, after Cabinet today. He was rebuffed, too busy, he was told. The PM got a big packed diary. Well, that sounds more like a rebuff, actually. The Prime Minister didn't want to talk to him, given the mood he was in this morning. But things have calmed down a bit this evening, and so they're going to have a chat tomorrow morning. That'll obviously be before the PM and indeed Mr Streeting go off to the Houses of Parliament. So we've seen the Prime Minister's cars arrive back here. Possibly the Prime Minister's had an audience with the King tonight ahead of that King's speech. Now, there have been suggestions this afternoon that the Palace actually rang up Number 10 and said, "Are you sure you want to go ahead with this King's speech?" Yes, they were told. Because, of course, that was earlier today when there was a frenzy. And, of course, this time last night, things looked pretty bleak for Sir Keir Starmer when, after Shabana Mahmood had gone in and told him the game was up. Now things are a bit calmer. We've had the Prime Minister's fight back, a fight back by his allies, cabinet ministers and other MPs as well. So Prime Minister lives to fight another day. How many days, though, we're not sure. But tomorrow's a big day. Meeting between Mr Streeting and the PM in the morning. Then all the pomp and ceremony in the House of Lords, and then a big showdown in the House of Commons between the Prime Minister and his critics on the opposition benches and his own.
Well, Joe, it's really quite something when the King has to check with the Prime Minister about whether he should set foot in his golden carriage. Thanks very much for that update. Well, a little earlier, our political editor, Beth Rigby, spoke to Harriet Harman, former Deputy Party leader, just appointed as the PM's advisor on women and girls, on the Electoral Dysfunction podcast.
If we're looking at having a team of all the talents when the country's facing terrible odds and the Labour Party is got a cloud hanging over it, clearly Andy is part of the solution to that. And could it be that Keir Starmer could say, actually, we need all the people in Cabinet to be the very best people for the country, and that includes Andy Burnham, and I'm going to call him back in and he's going to be part of my government.
Are you saying now you think that the PM should allow Andy Burnham back, that actually it would be a good idea to let Andy Burnham come back to Westminster?
Well, if he can construct a sense that the Cabinet is there to support the Prime Minister to do the best for the country in very difficult circumstances, if he can really build that sense, then why on earth would he not have Andy Burnham as part of that?
And you can catch the rest of the discussion on Starmer and his future on the latest episode of the Electoral Dysfunction podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. Well, Labour peer Maurice Glassman joins us now on the sofa. Maurice, you better sit up straight.
Sorry, I was watching the telly.
Show some respect.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you're close to Shabana Mahmood, the
Yeah.
Home Secretary. What the hell is going on?
Well, what you've got is I don't know what you think, Mick, but there's no ideological formation to this government. It's not recognisable as Labour, really.
I think I was just saying that before you came in.
Oh, I missed that.
Less big words.
Otherwise engaged. Were you plotting the coup?
Oh, OK. So what you've got is, and none of the contenders, other than actually Shabana. Shabana is the only one that I would say has actually a clear direction that will speak to particularly our working class voters.
And she's not going to be standing, is she?
No, but look at, she showed some courage, but it's just, what do they used to call it when I was young on the telly? They used to call it, shuffling the pack or rearranging the chairs on the Titanic there, right. The deck chairs. None of them have got a clear direction that can... Look, the big event in our country that we're still adjusting to, it seems, is the Brexit referendum. Right, where there was a huge working class turnout voting for sovereignty and they wanted an economic change. Do you remember Boris Johnson? Nobody really, but he was talking about resetting the economy, all of that. Didn't do anything, got absolutely slaughtered. We need industrial strategy.
He had COVID to deal with. That was the sort of problem, I think.
Well, he had other things to deal with too. And we can talk about that if you wish, but maybe it's not 10 o'clock yet. So.
But Maurice, coming back to Shabana Mahmood, she, as you said, showed courage. She, we believe, was the first cabinet minister to privately tell Keir Starmer to quit. That hasn't happened. So what happens now? Does Wes Streeting need to put up or shut up?
Yeah, but this is the point. Look, Keir Starmer is not a Prime Minister of action, he's a Prime Minister of procedure, of compliance, of process. This will work itself out over the summer, but the reality that he can't avoid is Sunderland. Well, what happened in Sunderland? Sunderland is cradle of the Labour movement, right? It's shipbuilding, it pioneered the first free medicine as a local council. It's been Labour for 100 years. And the result last Thursday was that Reform got 55 seats and we got 5. There's been, this is a different era that we're living in. And it's not just the problem is it's not just the Prime Minister, but they're all like listening to the Prince album. They're all dancing like it's 1999. You know, there's globalisation and the EU, and it's going to be transferable skills, and it's going to be the city. There's really no economic growth. There's no fundamental restoration of the quality of public services. There's a massive disaffection in the country. And what we're looking at is actually, you know, it's life or death for Labour. So we can talk about Andy Burnham or Angela Rayner. None of them have any clear direction as regards how to reconnect Labour with the working class of our country.
Maurice, I want to fix your mic in a second because we're not hearing you terribly clearly. But let me just ask you one more thing. If your mic's on your lapel, and I think you keep turning away and mumbling a little bit. But anyway, we'll fix it in a second. We'll fix it in a second.
I lost out to Mick.
I'm sorry, Gillian, you've lost out to Mick. It's just like that.
But just you said there that it will get sorted out over the summer. Is that a recognition that Keir Starmer is safe for another few months? This coup has failed.
There wasn't a coup. There was a local election. What there was an actual brush with reality. The people voted and they didn't vote for us. We've got to... Now, the big question before Labour is, I just want to remind everybody in the Labour Party, is that Reform won 1,500 seats and the Greens won, 400. That the real threat to us, the existential threat, as they say these days, is from a disaffected working class that no longer feels affection and belonging to the Labour movement. And Keir Starmer is just an absolutely perfect representative of that problem because he can't seem to connect with it.
Right. While we fix your mic, I just want to get your response, Mick, because, there's an acknowledgement there that the steam has gone out of this attempted coup, potentially. I'm not sure if that steam is the right word, but...
Or coup.
Well, I don't know if there's a coup. I'm not in the Labour bubble, in the Westminster bubble, and there's another bubble out there, which is where real people are. Yeah. I do know that there's not an industrial strategy, as Maurice was starting to say. We haven't got meaningful jobs in many of our communities. The ex-mining communities, the ex-mill towns, the ex-factory communities, the working class estates that Gillian grew up on, that I grew up on, are not being employed in a way that people would find satisfactory. Many people are outsourced to terrible companies on no terms and conditions, no wages, minimum wage and minimum statutory provision in everything, on the threat of losing that job every 18 months because of retendering processes. It's things like that that need to be addressed, where they say, we're going to give you secure employment on good wages, a high growth, high wage economy with good terms and conditions, good pensions, where the whole community is growing. That is a long-term project, but you can do some short-term things. Starmer came to the TUC and said there's going to be the biggest insourcing wave in the history of the Labour movement. Not one job in government has been insourced. None of the cleaners, none of the security guards, none of the people doing the work for the Environment Agency are working
That's just
direct.
Moving the jobs around. The bigger
No, it's
thing
not
is
moving the jobs around. It's
here.
giving people job security, giving them meaningful work, working for a good employer, not being shoved to a multinational company.
They were always good employers. They trained me.
They're not good employers, Gillian.
They're fantastic
They put you on the
employers.
minimum wage.
Bin men and bin refuse collectors used to work direct for the council, right? Now they work for outsourced subcontractors who pay them as little as possible. And if they could get away with it, they'd pay them nothing whatsoever. People like Farage will get rid of the minimum wage, will get rid of all the protections that we've got.
Well, maybe the minimum wage has risen so high that, you know, young people aren't getting employed now.
That's true. Nonsense. The problem is we've got so many precarious businesses. The businesses that we launch, everybody goes on about the small entrepreneur and all the rest of it, many of them are completely precarious, living on tiny fractional margins because of outsourcing.
Let me bring you back in.
Yeah, look, I mean, for this, there's no... Look, Brexit was the huge turning point. What happened in 2016 was... It hasn't been the same. The politics has been volatile ever since. And what it offered up, the possibilities of Brexit, was a national economic strategy, right? And
and global trade deals, that was a big part of it. And not paying the EU 13 billion every year, which we've achieved.
Yeah, and not being part of a stagnant, moribund economic bloc. And what's essential is that there is... Look, I'm into the restoration of our armed forces.
We're all agreed we're going to invest in defence, right?
Well,
yeah, but also...
Mick's a bit more ambiguous.
A bit cagey.
But
He'd rather invest in the bins.
This is where I'm at, is that we can actually have state partnership, a state direction within weapons production. I think it's vital. I think we're in a new era. The old era is over. There's war in Ukraine. They're a key partner. What they're doing over there, Mick, in terms of inventing new stuff, is amazing.
So, Maurice, who's best placed to lead this discussion that you've just set up?
Well, I really hope that, you know, reason can prevail with Shabana and that she can... Look, there's got to be
a party hates her.
Yeah, well...
Very Conservative Party agenda.
No, unfortunately, the Conservative Party are nowhere near conservative enough. That's just a beginning. But secondly, they completely went on with the new Labour economic model.
But, you know, for Shabana to stand, she's got to first resign from the Cabinet. Do you think that is still an option?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Let's see how this breaks over the summer. What we're looking at the moment is not a coup. What we're looking at is a party beginning to respond to a grief-stricken day, which was last Thursday, and respond to the results that came in. You know, Sunderland is one thing, but it was all over me. It wasn't just the North East, it was the North West, which is another cradle of...
Eastern England, South Wales.
Yeah.
But you're talking about months ahead of this psychodrama, and it is a psychodrama, and I'm not sure people can take much more of it.
Look, the state rolls on, but what there's got to be
That's what you said.
Yeah, it does. But the point is...
So does the news, and they'll all be watching it thinking, what on earth are you doing?
Not all of us get overexcited about it.
But normal people do. They're sat there thinking, what does it mean for my job? Can my kids... is someone going to invest?
Let's look at the viewing figures. I reckon more people are watching Netflix right now.
Well, they watch it on YouTube. They'll watch it on YouTube.
That's absolutely outrageous slur on the popularity of this programme,
I
Maurice.
know. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. What I'm saying is that the people get a sense of a government without direction, and they're responding to that. And what they want to see is whether there could be a genuine addressing of what their concerns are, which is about immigration, about stopping the boats, about getting secured jobs, about securing civic order on the streets. This is where they are.
I would refer you to the Conservative Party's alternative King's Speech for tomorrow.
You've done that
several
times.
I know, but it's twice. But it's actually got every single one of them.
You've been doing
That's why I think it's Conservative Party.
Maurice, you know who else is watching this? You were talking about more people watching the Netflix and so on, but someone who is watching the news is Vladimir Putin. All of this is terrible for Britain's international reputation, isn't it?
Well, look, we've got to actually define what our space is in the world. That's the other thing that, you know, like, for example, for trade deals, Mick, I'm in favour of no trade deals with anybody that doesn't recognise free and democratic trade unions. You know, we've got to stop the race to the bottom.
Why do we have to tell everyone else in the world how to run the countries? We can't even run our own.
Because they get away with cheap labour and exploitation. Look at the Chinese Communist Party, biggest exploiters. Yeah, so we've got to define our position in the world, a strong relationship with Ukraine. I think we've got to absolutely support the end of this Islamic revolutionary government and be fully supportive of the people in Iran, Britain can have a place in the world. What people don't see at the moment is any sense of direction.
Right.
And that's what's got to be defined.
We're going to come back to that in just a second. But in the last few seconds, a big sign that Downing Street is again trying to shore things up tonight. Deputy Political Editor, the indefatigable Sam Coates, can fill us in. Sam?
So, you saw and have reported all evening the departures of 4 ministers, Miatta Fahnbulleh, Jess Phillips, Alex Davis-Jones and Dr Zubair Ahmed. Right now, Downing Street have moved to fill those posts. So Nezal Kaliskan, who is the Barking MP, has gone into the housing department, so that replaces Miatta Fahnbulleh. Natalie Fleet, who of course was on your sofa a couple of weeks ago, Cathy, has gone into the Home Office. Catherine Atkinson has gone into Justice. Preet Kaur Gill has gone into the Department for Health and Social Care. If you remember, she's quite a Starmer loyalist. She's been doing interviews all day. No doubt that will be an ability of Number 10 to just keep a little eye on Wes Streeting in the Health Department so long as he is there. Jen Kitchen is a whip, as is Deirdre Costigan and Sean Davies. Look, what's the big message that Number 10 is trying to send right now? That it's business as usual. 87 MPs might have come out against us. We might have had 4 ministerial resignations and a number of people on the lowest government-rung PPSs leave, but we're just going to replace them if they go, bid them farewell and find somebody to fill the slot. And there are, of course, 403 Labour MPs, so finding people who have not signed the letters for the Prime Minister to go or signed up to the idea that the Prime Minister to go isn't that hard. Government looking like it's functioning this evening. Quite important for them to do that ahead of the King's speech tomorrow. Really, constitutionally, it would not be a good look if the government was completely falling apart hours before King Charles was due to come down the Mall, come down Whitehall and deliver the government business agenda in the House of Lords tomorrow. There you have a series of late-night appointments by Keir Starmer, who has spent much of the day in Downing Street dealing with the crisis and then trying to fix it.
Indeed, and with all those backbench MPs to pick from, this could go on for some weeks. So, Sam, I know you'll get some sleep at some point, but not for now. We need you. Well, let's return now to our sofa. Maurice, I just want to play you a clip that we've just got in from Donald Trump. He's had his say on what's been going on. Let's watch it.
Thank you. Mark Stone from Sky News. What's your advice to Keir Starmer, sir? He seems to be on the brink.
Well, my advice to him has always been, open up your oil in the North Sea. You got one of the great oil finds anywhere in the world, and you're not using it. They're not allowed to use it. And it's one of the best in the world, among the best oils in the world. Open up your oil in the North Sea and get tough on immigration.
Did he stay or go?
Europe is being very, very hurt by immigration all over Europe.
Did he stay or go?
That's up to him. But I've told him from day one, you're getting killed on energy. You're windmilling your country to death. Open up the North Sea. You have one of the greatest sources of energy in the world. Open up the North Sea.
The pressure is from Nigel Farage, sir.
Well, Maurice, Lord Glassman, you were famously invited to Trump's inauguration. What do you make of that?
That is a completely unsurprising thing.
What, that you were invited to the inauguration?
No, that was a shocking thing. I didn't invite myself, by the way. I was invited and I was alone.
Yeah.
So imagine that. Mick, that's a story to be told. And so I'm not surprised by what he's saying, but the relevance of what he's saying is about energy and energy prices.
Yep.
And we can't have an industrial strategy
without it.
Without that. That we've got to look at renewables, we've got to look at the intensification of nuclear, and we have to look at fossil fuels as well.
Right, so start the drilling in the North Sea again.
Cheap energy plans.
Definitely, I'd be open mind. We need, if we're going to have an industrial strategy, we need energy and we need cheap energy. It's not only good to be
It's
warm.
killing all the business investment. Literally,
Well, it's also about AI. AI demands a huge intensity of energy.
And you've seen them pause
what about the climate? Mickey, are you going to be a dissenting voice in this loving on the sofa here?
Well, I'm not against a mixed energy package. You know, nobody's against that. We've got people working on the North Sea, on the rigs, in our energy sector, in our union. But everything has got to grow. So if there's going to be a nuclear programme, you've got to mean it. You've got to be able to build it and get it done quickly. If you've got to sustain some carbon energy, you've got to sustain it. but you've also got to grow renewables. I don't think there's any contradiction in it.
I
People make this a sort of fundamentalist view.
Ed
You've got to knit the
Miliband
energy somehow. You haven't. You've got.
But Ed Miliband
stopped drilling.
I
That's
don't
the
think he is.
problem.
When I've been speaking to him, when I was General Secretary, we were in there meeting with him. People were frustrated. He was very frustrated about how slow it is to get projects started, and he wanted to make this transition. One of the big issues in the North East and the North of Scotland are transitioning jobs from oil and gas into new energy jobs. So that is part of the skills agenda.
It is a part, and I was dealing with actually the trade councils, the trade bodies on that at the time. And you can transition those jobs. But actually, for now, bearing in mind where we are with oil and oil pricing, we do have to drill.
If you started drilling,
as well as nuclear, as well as
tomorrow, you wouldn't solve
there's
the present
4
energy
licenses
crisis.
that are there. They've stopped the licenses. We'd already signed them. They've now, like everything we did, they've said, oh no, we're not doing that. It was conservative. They just need to sign those licenses. That is the problem. For some reason, he's against it.
Maurice, just coming back to the sort of consideration about what happens in the next few days, you said you'd like Shabana Mahmood to be in consideration in a leadership contest. Do you worry that she did an interview on our show? Do you worry that the party is moving to the left and it's going to ditch her immigration reform?
It's not the way I see it. I divide the world up not into left and right now, but genuinely I'd like to have this conversation between sovereigntists and globalists, right? It's about what is the role of the nation state. We need to be self-sufficient in energy. We have to pursue that. We've got to have a national industrial strategy. Nationalisation is part of that completely. So what I think is that the party is now retreating into a kind of Remain comfort zone, and that would be catastrophic both electorally and politically and economically.
When you look at the polling, Andy Burnham is net positive, isn't he? He's streets ahead in that respect, isn't he? Everybody else is a net negative.
It's Coronation Street's ahead, you know, in Manchester.
Mick?
He's ahead, but again, he's got to have a programme. Yeah. It's no good being charismatic. That soon wears off. Boris Johnson found that. You've got to have something to say to the public, say something to the particular areas of need, and create a long-term strategy while addressing immediate
You're also
issues.
more popular when you're not doing the job. Let's be honest. As soon as you get the job, the government, and I don't know if Maurice has been in government as well, but it is literally hard. Literally, it's just hard decision. Hard versus even worse. Okay. That is what you're doing and all the time. And events and responding to events. So you've got to have the courage to do it, and you've got to have the temperament to do it, and you've got to have the communication skills to do it. But as soon as you're doing it, you will do things that are unpopular. That is true.
Yeah, what I say to Mick, it's not just a programme, it's a sense of direction.
Well, yeah, principles, beliefs.
Not just that.
Yeah, but does he have principles and beliefs, Andy Burnham?
I feel like I'm in the tea room in 1970 and we're talking to the industrial strategy for the country.
Well, that's it. This is a different era, and there's large parts of the 70s we've got to go before Thatcher, because there was a huge deindustrialisation under Margaret Thatcher, and all it did was benefit the Chinese Communist Party, who actually build things. And
we could have that conversation, because I was working as an apprentice in a car factory where all the jobs were basically people were striking themselves out of jobs, and the whole lot went away. And I blamed the unions at the time, which is why I never joined one. So you know, this is the way it goes around. But what I'll tell you is those jobs are no longer there, and I was working there for 7.5 years.
Okay, you could say that, but it was also. Industry was not a priority. Finance was in the.
Well, we had the coal mines as well, which was obviously the other transition.
And that's all gone.
Maurice, just a final thought from you.
Is it?
Well, I'm sorry.
Is that it? I came all the way in. It seems like 5 minutes.
I mean, you know, we've only got half an hour left on this 3-hour show, so you know, time is running out.
He's going to come to the answer and the decade.
Yeah. Well.
Just a final thought. There is this massive operation now to shore up the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
You know, there's a website going around that people are being told, voters are being told to lobby their MP to retract their letter, you know, calling for the Prime Minister's resignation. Yeah. What do you think about this operation?
It looks a bit Soviet to me, like it's Andropov or Chernenko. Unless Keir Starmer can define actually the direction of this Labour government to be pro-worker, pro-industry, pro-liberty.
Pro-growth, pro-growth.
Completely so. this has got to be this is the direction of the new era. And we all mock and laugh at Trump, but what he's done is transform American politics, because he's got a sense of you know, make America great again. It's like a restoration project. And Labour's got, look, in the history of my party, sovereignty was vital, nationalisation was important, democracy was central, liberty. We don't talk about any of these things. They're just talking about projects and policies that nobody notices. There's got to be, there's a reckoning going on here. The Conservatives won a huge landslide in 2019 and they blew it all. They completely...
We were really knocked off track by COVID. I will definitely agree with that.
But this is like one of those...
I mean, literally 4 months after Boris took the job, and I was a minister then, literally that was it. We were in lockdown. So it was incredibly difficult, and I'm not making excuses. We got thrown out, and I'm sat here no longer an MP as a result of that. But, you know, you can't ignore that. And I actually think a lot of the things that are happening that still are going to take a decade to overcome are as a result of some of the things that closing down the world's global economy for 2 years has an impact on everything.
I get that.
GPs, everything.
I accept your mitigating circumstances, no. Right?
Good, thank you.
However, there was no reset of the economy. There was huge migration, all things that didn't take back control, and all of these things. And Labour's in danger of really dying in the hearts of its people unless it can articulate a vision for our country that's not just a programme, but also democracy, liberty, industry, the dignity of Labour. These are the cores of our movement, and we've got to get back to that.
Lord Glassman, thank you very much for making the journey, and you're welcome on the sofa, the pink sofa, any time.
Well, that's kind. Could I come on for longer next time?
Well, I'm sure, you know, we'll have a 4-hour show
I just feel I've
next time.
arrived, now I'm leaving.
just getting into it up to speed.
You got your cup of
You weren't
tea.
conservative enough.
I am conservative enough.
You are watching a special edition of the Cathy Newman Show. Still to come, we'll ask if Keir Starmer's meeting with Wes Streeting tomorrow morning is going to be the Labour showdown that could define his premiership. Stay with us.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter.
I began by asking,
thank you so much,
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
This is a special edition of the Cathy Newman Show. Another extraordinary day in Westminster, but the political storm has not lifted yet. Tomorrow morning, Health Secretary Wes Streeting will meet the Prime Minister. Streeting, seen as a leadership hopeful, will speak to Sir Keir Starmer before the King's speech opening Parliament. Well, let's go to Chief Political Correspondent John Craig, who's in Downing Street now. And John, we've been wondering what is going on in number 10 now. What is Sir Keir Starmer up to this evening? And we've got a better idea now, haven't we? Because he's been on the phone, we're told.
I can tell you two things, two pieces of news here for this evening. You've already heard from Sam about the new appointments to fill the gaps left by those ministers who've quit, junior ministers. Can I just say, I think the really eye-catching one is the appointment of Natalie Fleet to take over the Jess Phillips job at the Home Office on safeguarding women and violence, tackling violence against women and girls. Cathy, we all remember your very moving interview a week or two ago with Natalie Fleet and her daughter, who was conceived through rape, and they're talking for the first time about the impact on their lives. I've interviewed Natalie Fleet quite a few times, and she speaks with great emotion and great passion about that subject and safeguarding of women and tackling violence against women and girls. And I think that's not a surprise appointment particularly, but probably quite an inspired appointment that will be widely welcomed. So those appointments we've heard about from Sam. Let me tell you also, though, as well as a potential showdown with Wes Streeting tomorrow morning, the Prime Minister may be heading for a potential showdown with John Swinney, Scotland's First Minister. Now, what has happened this evening is that they've had a phone call, and the versions of the phone call, as so often happens between one leader and another, not terribly similar, a bit of difference between them. Now, according to the SNP, they've agreed to meet next month to discuss a referendum on independence. Well, that's not how Downing Street see it. The SNP government saying the First Minister's pleased that the PM reached out to congratulate him on his emphatic election win, and the Prime Minister stressed his willingness to work in collaboration with the Scottish Government where possible. The SNP government says it's particularly welcome the PM agreed to meet next month to discuss a referendum on independence. So now they go on. The SNP goes on to say, given the SNP's landslide victory and the fact that people of Scotland have elected more pro-independence MSPs than at any point during Parliament's history. Not sure about that. They did get an overall majority. I think it was 2011. The previous refusal of the UK government to consider Scotland's right to decide its own future was clearly unsustainable. A way forward must be found, and these discussions are welcome. And it goes on about the momentum. And but number 10 responding have seen it rather differently, and we understand that the Prime Minister actually said to Mr. Swinney when he talked about independence, well, you know, we don't support independence. So our position remains unchanged. Number 10 says, yes, they're going to have a meeting, but the manifesto this government was elected on was unambiguous. Labour does not support independence or another referendum. So, should be quite a feisty meeting when they do meet.
Indeed, John, lots of feisty meetings going on in number 10 in the next 24, 48 hours. Thanks very much, as ever. And you will notice that we've decamped outside the studio now, left that comfy sofa. That is so that the brilliant Anna Botting and team can get ready for the wrap. That's coming up at 10 p.m. Who's on the wrap tonight, I hear you ask? Well, here to discuss today's developments and the best of tomorrow's papers will be the former Conservative Special Advisor, Salma Shah, and Sir Keir Starmer's former Director of Communications, James Lyons. Well, Gillian Keegan and Mick Lynch are still here. They've done the whole 3 hours, a bit of a marathon for them. I'm very pleased to say also joining us now is political editor at Politics Joe, Ava Santina Evans, who's here as well. Well, let me just start with you, Ava, actually. We're hearing about some of the reshuffle appointments. I want to ask you about independence in a bit too. But that appointment of Natalie Fleet to the Home Office, it's quite an inspired appointment, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, certainly that could be argued, couldn't it? Because, I mean, of her, that incredible story in that interview that she gave to you, and it was incredibly brave of her to appear with her daughter. But Natalie Fleet is also a Starmer loyalist, so it's unsurprising. She is new intake. She came in at 2024. She was part of the selection process that involved Morgan McSweeney. So she is seen as a loyal candidate for Keir Starmer. She has actually been out to bat for him a number of times. She was, I keep her on the books as one of those MPs that you reach out to if you want to hear how his favourites are doing, you know, the sort of people who want to keep him in power. So it isn't really a surprise. And then the same over with Catherine Atkinson, who's also been appointed this evening. She's also 2024 intake, who came off the books with that Labour shuffle around to oust some of the left wing of the party. These were the more sort of centre-right candidates that were brought in to bolster Starmer's position when he went into that general election.
But Ava, the broader point is that he survives in number 10. He's making these appointments. He's carrying on with the business of government. That's rather astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the reason that this is happening is because there isn't a candidate who has managed to get 81 signatures on a piece of paper and hand that to the General Secretary of the Labour Party. You know, there is no cross-consensus about who should be the successor to Keir Starmer. And it does seem that the soft left and even actually the centre-right can't quite seem to get their act together. And I'm sensing that there is some frustration, particularly around the Wes Streeting allies. There is Dr. Sabir Ahmed, who was one of the health ministers who resigned earlier this evening, and he was spotted actually in a meeting with Wes Streeting only a couple of hours ago by some fellow Labour MPs. And it seemed that there was some frustration that, those resignations perhaps had taken place because it was assumed that Streeting would throw his hat into the ring. But now everything has sort of calmed down and slowed down slightly. So that plan is a little bit off kilter. But, again, like I said, until everyone can get behind a couple of candidates, there is going to be no leadership challenge.
Ava, we'll stay there because I want to come back to you on independence and much more. But let me bring in Mick on that point. I mean, there's a sense here that Wes Streeting might have blown it, mightn't he?
Well, if he doesn't declare, I don't suppose we will declare tomorrow on the day of the King's speech, but if he doesn't do something by Thursday, he may have shot his bolt, as they used to say, because people are going to say, well, where are you? And junior ministers have put their heads up and he hasn't come in behind them. I don't want Wes Streeting to win at all. I think he'd be a disaster. But if he's going to...
Explain why.
Well, because I think he's too right-wing. I don't think the country wants another right or person more to the right.
I can see
Starmer.
Gillian chuckling away at the idea
and
of
I think it'll be more of the same. It will be
right-wing.
more of that management, non-belief type politics.
Oh, the Mendelssohnianism.
Mendelssohnianism,
Or the stuff that works for the economy, maybe a bit of
well,
that.
It didn't work.
Oh, you're backing Wes, are you, Gillian?
Yeah.
You know what?
It's very close politically.
I like Wes. Actually, I like many of my Labour colleagues, but I think they've still got 87 or so, and we've heard from many of them today, and they're pretty clear about the decisions they've made. He virtually doesn't have a working majority. Now, there isn't any real business tomorrow in the King's speech, but there will be business to get through all of that. There'll be all the speeches around the King's speech, and then, obviously, there'll be votes that will go through. He had barely any political authority before any of this. He couldn't get welfare reform through. He's had many, many U-turns because he can't get his policies through. And he's just going to be stuck, I think, even if his cabinet stay where they are, with half of them, or more than half of them, not saying anything in support of him so far.
Wes Streeting will be lucky to win his seat next time, by the way.
Well, yeah, I mean, so it's kind of do or die now for him, really, isn't it?
He's got a very small majority.
Yeah. I mean, Ava, that's the point, isn't it? That Mick, you've heard Mick there just saying that, really, Wes has got a deadline now, and he can't really come out and say anything tomorrow because of this hiatus for the King's speech. Is that the vibe you're getting?
Well, he has a deadline in terms of sort of the Westminster furore that's currently around the Prime Minister. But it doesn't mean that in a couple of months' time, when he's got enough names or signatories, it doesn't mean that he can't launch his campaign then. Perhaps he's going to bide his time and wait. I imagine that he is patient enough to wait a couple of months in order to become Prime Minister. But the difficulty for Wes Streeting would be if Andy Burnham does end up finding a seat to stand in, and he does win that seat and is able to run and challenge him. because it's far more likely that the Labour membership would vote for Andy Burnham over Wes Streeting. And arguably, actually, even a lot of the MPs that are inside, currently in the Labour Party, in the Parliamentary Labour Party, would choose someone like Burnham over Streeting. That's when it gets complicated, and that's when I think I could imagine someone like Shabana Mahmood, for example, could launch a challenge. And if you had a three-way contest between Shabana Mahmood, Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham, I promise you Streeting's going to come in third place.
Interesting. And what more have you been able to glean about Andy Burnham? Because he's the King of the North, got on the train to London today, didn't he? What's going on?
He is, yeah. Well, I tried to speak to a couple of people inside the Greater Manchester Mayoralty office, and they had no idea what he was doing. So that could be, perhaps, suggest that he's not here on official Manchester mayoral duties. I do understand that he has got some meetings. I have heard a couple of people reached out to him and asked if they had any time or space to see them for a drink or a coffee, and he said he was fully booked up. So whatever he's doing, he's very, very busy.
Mick, can you shed any light on what on earth he's up to?
Andy? Andy Burnham's diary? No, not really. But
he hasn't invited you to his little trysts or whatever's happening?
No, nobody's invited me to anything. I'm not a member of the Labour Party, so I won't get a vote. I'm an interested bystander in some ways, but I don't know what he's doing.
You fund them, don't you? You fund half of them.
We fund candidates, not all Labour.
Ah. Well, you never gave me anything.
No, that won't be changing.
You're not quite on the same page, are you?
No.
But Gillian, it's so reminiscent, isn't it, as I said at the top of the show, so reminiscent of what happened with Boris Johnson. And, the ministers came, and every day we'd kind of think, well, surely this is unsustainable. We're in that territory now, aren't we?
Yes, except I think it's even more complicated, because everybody's talking as though Andy Burnham just trots out somewhere in the north, and everybody's going to be waiting there with, sort of jazz hands saying, yes, Andy, we want you to represent. Look at the results around Greater Manchester for Labour in those last weeks. They were dreadful. And even in Liverpool, where both Andy and I are from, there's a lot of competition now from the Green Party. So it's by-elections are always very tricky. Yeah. So it's no sure thing, and everyone's talking about it as though he just needs to click his fingers.
There's no safe.
And King of the North, and no one believes he's the King of the North. He calls himself the King of the North.
Yeah,
no one else does.
They were dreadful for Keir Starmer, not for Andy Burnham. If Andy Burnham was standing in a seat, what would be most peculiar, as the official candidate, Keir Starmer would have to support him. And so would all the other people that he's going to run in a contest with.
Yes.
So it's quite a surreal situation we're in now.
But there's no... Well, yeah, Keir Starmer sort of hinted that he doesn't mind, Andy Burnham coming back at some point. You'll get your chance, lad, sort of thing. But, I mean, there's no such thing as a safe Labour seat anymore, is there?
There doesn't seem to be. Maybe he'll have to come down to Islington and get Jeremy Corbyn to stand aside.
He's independent.
Well, and also the Greens, by the way.
There are. Ealing is fairly safe.
I don't think there's any such thing as a safe seat. I mean, literally, the volatility in our politics, and obviously this 5, 6, 7-party system. We're only at the beginning of that. That is going to create even more uncertainty. And that's part of what's driving a lot of anxiety of MPs. They're looking, thinking, I'm not going to stay here. I've only just got here and I'm not going to be here because this guy's going to lose me my seat because he's lost me all my councillors, and that's what's happening.
Ava, uncertainty also about the future of the Union, isn't there? And we were talking there about Scotland's First Minister having this conversation with Keir Starmer, making this demand for another independence referendum at some point down the track. I mean, that's all now in play, isn't it, again?
Well, it's in play, but it's in Keir Starmer's gift whether he wants to grant it or not. And, he could do a David Cameron and offer a referendum thinking that might, settle some peace for a couple of years. But when actually that ended up in a lot of turmoil and we ended up Brexiting or, leaving the European Union. But, John Swinney, he ran on a platform and a mandate. He says he has a mandate for a referendum. But as I just said, it's not his to grant. He can't offer a referendum unless Starmer signs it off. And I think that's probably why during the last general election there was a lot of movement towards Anasawa and Labour, because perhaps there was some suggestion or some feeling amongst voters that perhaps if there was a Labour government in both Scotland and down in Westminster, then perhaps there might be a pact and they might actually be granted a referendum. But, it's nice that Starmer's taking the meeting, but to what end? I'd also just add there to Gillian's point there about Liverpool. I would say also the threat of reform in Liverpool, and I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth, but the threat of reform in Liverpool is very real. Over in Dan Cardle's seat, he is actually rather concerned that going into the next general election, he could lose that. to reform, which is crazy when you think about Liverpool, which was die-hard Labour only, what, 4 years ago?
I mean, that's extraordinary, isn't it, Gillian?
It is, and it just shows. But a lot of people did also, not actually in the centre of Liverpool, because they've been the city of culture and it was very obvious, but outside of Liverpool, a lot of people also voted for Brexit. I had uncles who literally registered to vote for the first time in their 60s to vote to leave the European Union. So there is still that overlay, and people from different parts of the world, going back to Mick's point, particularly if they feel that they were left behind and they haven't had, you know, increase. And that's exactly what a lot of people are like. So it will be territory where reform will get a hearing.
Mick, just coming back to the State of the Union, I mean, that is the real one of the many consequences of last week's elections, isn't it? That, you know, Labour has lost, well, they thought they'd regained Scotland, lost Wales, been absolutely dominant there for a century.
Yeah.
That's still playing out.
I imagine Scottish Labour are furious because they were working really hard and they were making ground. I don't know if they'd have got an absolute majority, but they may have got a share of power. And now John Swinney's doing his job. His job is to push for Scottish independence. So it's no surprise that's happening. I don't think Keir Starmer will be deflected very long on it, but that may alienate people in Scotland a bit more if they feel they're not being listened to because of this Westminster crisis that's been generated amongst 400 Labour MPs. So he's got to have an eye on that, but John Swinney's just doing the job he's elected to do.
And despite Keir Starmer's weakness, he can still push back on an independence referendum.
Yeah, I don't think
it's a no-brainer.
I don't think those English Labour MPs are going to spend too much time thinking about Scottish independence.
Plus, they don't have a majority, actually. In Holyrood, they don't, you know, the SNP don't have a majority, so...
We'll come into the final moments of this show. It's bizarre, isn't it? Because there was a point, well, various points today where there just seemed to be an inevitable momentum which would lead to the Prime Minister stepping down. It's not happened, has it? It's, you know...
Well, I didn't think it was going to happen today. You know, he's a process man, has been said lots of times. He'll have to surrender to the process eventually. I don't think he will be the leader for much longer, but I think there will have to be a genuine contest, which will include Burnham, but they have to lay out a programme, because otherwise it's their last chance. And I fear that the Labour Party will disintegrate.
Gillian, final word?
I mean, I've always thought that he'd stay and he'd cling on by his fingertips, because I think he genuinely does believe he's the right person and the best person for the job. He's better than all the others. I think there's still problems with all the others. Andy doesn't have a seat. Wes has still got some things to answer. And also, you know, there's still tax questions about Angela Rayner. So, you know, once you get into the contest, then it'll be a real civil war. And
we'll get you back then. Thank you both so much for being with us for this extended show. Thank you also to Ava down the line for us. That is just about it from us. It's been an extraordinary day, and it's been a pleasure to be on the show to tell you all about it, because Keir Starmer has lived to fight another day. The day started with all eyes on the meeting of his cabinet. There were raucous scenes in Downing Street as ministers addressed the cameras to insist that the Prime Minister is not quitting and will fight on. But after today, he does appear further weakened. 4 ministers have resigned, joining at least 80 MPs urging him to quit. And, of course, he'll wake up tomorrow to a meeting with the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, in his diary, the man who's seen by many as the leadership hopeful best positioned to take over if Starmer were to go now. And after that, there is, of course, the small matter of the King's speech and him having to address the House of Commons. We'll have full coverage of that, of course, tomorrow on Sky News. I'll be back with you tomorrow at 7 p.m. But Anna Botting is up next with The Wrap. Plenty to discuss there. So I'll see you back here, same place, same time, tomorrow.